later on, right? But there's many other things we're going to talk about. You know about G20. Well, what about B20 and what's the relationship between B20 and G20? And all of that will effectively do an explainer with Cas Coovadia, who's the B20 Sherpa. That comes up in the next few minutes, right? But before we get to all of that, let's get straight into a significant bit of law enactment that has taken place. The U.S. Congressman Troy Nehls introduced the Asylum for Farmers and Refugees in Crisis and Necessary Immigration Resettlement Act. Now, that sounds very, very wordy. What it simply means, it's the Afrikaner Act. And the act will grant priority to refugee status to residents of South Africa. That's one, who are members of the Afrikaner ethnic minority group, number two. And then particularly those who feel ill-treated by the government, our government, post the introduction of the Expropriation Act. Now, you know that issue has been going on and being debated in different quarters and capitals of the world in the last month or two, isn't it? So let's get reaction from Christo van der Rede, who's the Executive Director at the F.W. de Klerk Foundation. Christo, appreciate you connecting on the National Pulse. Christo, do I have you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I certainly can hear you now, right? Appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse. Now, I mean, first things first, in terms of the act, whether it's called the Afrikaner Act or Refugee Act, I mean, that's not a surprise. It's been promised for the better part of a month, right? But now that it's there, what do you make of it in terms of the practicalities of it all?
We are quite clear as the F.W. de Klerk Foundation that there is no justification for this act because the entire premise on which President Trump and the Trump administration in particular has based its allegations about land confiscation, about terrible things that are happening, including genocide. These are based on misinformation, on false information. And I think the bigger Afrikaner community is quite perturbed by this development. And that's why we came out quite strongly to denounce it.
Okay, so one thing is denouncing it. And yes, I mean, there are people who feel aggrieved. But by and large, many people are like saying, hold it, it's nowhere near the level of what we'd call genocidal or effectively eliminating population groups as Donald Trump is making it out to be. So that's a question between Trump and AfriForum and Solidarity and others to comment on, right? But having said that, now this is an act, this is law from the USA. So in the practical terms of what we have now, would let's say, for example, would you, as the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, would you then play even now a role not just to denounce the position in terms of how South Africa is perceived, but to dissuade South Africans from taking up the opportunity?
Indeed, we've been engaging with farmers in my personal capacity. We've been engaging on various forums with Afrikaners and the bigger Afrikaans community, and many farmers are of the opinion that this is unnecessary hysteria that is being sort of pushed and promoted, and it's really unnecessary for the bigger Afrikaner community to be exposed in this way, because it's very clear that Afrikaners enjoy a very privileged position in South Africa. I'm attending one of the big Afrikaans festivals, and the funny thing is, the bulk of the people that are attending the festival are Afrikaners, and there's not any indication that people are in any way taking up this offer of a refugee ship, because people have been, and especially young people from the various communities, whether it's from the black or the white community, they've applied for jobs in the USA, and they've been doing so for many years. And a very popular job for young people in America is to go and work on farms. It's a tough job, but they earn a lot of good money, and they bring that money back to invest in their own small businesses and so forth. So we are saying continue to do so. It's not necessary to, at the end of the day, take up any refugee ship, because there's other ways of accessing opportunities, not only in the USA, but all over the world. And that's what young people should do, and we should encourage them to do so.
Sense, and I know this, it's not scientifically explained here, but I mean, do you have any sense how many people may actually take up the offer?
I think there will be people that are perhaps very desperate, people that are currently perhaps unemployed, people that are in a position of, perhaps in a particular personal state of despair. But the figures that are doing the rounds, there's no real substance to those figures, and one would have to wait and see, how many people will actually take up this offer.
You made the point earlier on that that Afrikaners enjoy a privileged position in South Africa. Is that enjoy as in the present tense, or enjoy? I just want to be very clear about what you mean.
No, it's in the present tense. If you look at land ownership in South Africa, the bulk of farmland is owned by Afrikaners. The lowest unemployment figures it's amongst Afrikaners. The highest level of wealth, average wealth exists amongst Afrikaners. And the chance for them to access opportunities, it far outweighs the perception that is being created that there's large-scale discrimination against Afrikaners. And I think we need to continue to stress the point that, yes, we are dead set against employment equity based on skin color, because we've suddenly seen this trend by government departments to say, but this percentage of employment opportunities must go towards Africans, this percentage to coloreds, this percentage to whites. And we are saying these are blunt instruments that serve no purpose but to, at the end of the day, cause a situation where people are not necessarily appointed based on what they can bring to the table, but they are merely appointed based on skin color. And that is something that we should address, because it's impacting negatively at various levels where services should be rendered towards our people.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that Afrikaners, enjoyed in the past tense a privileged position in South Africa, enjoy a privileged position in South Africa right now. However, certain mechanisms like the Employment Equity Act and maybe things like affirmative action and BE as a means of redress, and we understand why they exist, in fact, have become problematic in keeping the social cohesion together, because it creates maybe a sense of distrust amongst those who feel affected by it, right? How then do we remedy that? I mean, what would you then propose to government to say, understand the principle of redress, but can we look at it in another way?
Yeah. Remember, and I want to emphasize, all of these mechanisms are not just only impacting on white people. It also impacts on colored people. It also impacts on black people who are trapped in circumstances of poverty, and where municipality at the end of the day lack expertise, because we are using blunt instruments such as employment equity based on target setting. Services are not delivered, and as a result of that, people suffer. So it's important that we have to go back to the drawing board. Remember, it's a constitutional imperative that we have to deal with the social injustices of the past. But you can only deal with the social injustice of the past if there is real change. And we haven't seen the real change. And because of various factors that, at the end of the day, has a constraining impact, a constraining effect on people's ability to deliver what should be delivered in terms of the Bill of Rights. If you look at the Bill of Rights, it serves as a blueprint, and it should be serving as a blueprint for South Africa for the development. We've seen great neglect in terms of the Bill of Rights. So there's other ways, as opposed to using blunt instruments, that I want to emphasize. We should look at a better mixture, not employment equity targets, but a mixture between redress and meritocracy. We can find a great balance between those two aspects. I think we will be on the right.
But I take it that's just your wish list. You don't have a practical solution at this point in time.
Yes, no, we have practical solutions, and I think that's a discussion for a different day, and we've written quite extensively about that.
Okay.
And I think because I think our time is limited to explain that.
Yes, it is. Okay, let's do that soon. I mean, I'd love to have that conversation some other time, right? Perhaps here's the last thing then. I mean, the one part, of course, is that, I suppose if Afrikaners do resettle some of them, would that have an impact on South Africa's economy, or do you think that's rather minimal?
No, I think that's minimal. Most Afrikaners, as I said, they are heavily invested in South Africa. If you just take our agriculture sector, farmers invest in the region of 250 billion rand a year, as opposed to the state's contribution of 27 billion rand a year. And we actually farm on the back of debt. And people enjoy, the fact that they can still continue to create wealth in South Africa because of our constitutional democracy and the ways it has shaped South Africa.
All right, let me end with this very quickly, right? I mean, you've explained your position personally and on behalf of the FW de Klerk Foundation. AfriForum has done theirs, and so has Solidaridate, and so has many other people. And at this point in time, Donald Trump has heard the Afrikaner, the AfriForum version, and acted upon that, right? How do you ensure, and South Africa ensures, that your voice is heard in Washington and not, and if it is heard and others are heard, then your voice must overshadow the others because it's that important. How do we do that?
Yeah, we engage with our American counterparts. We've engaged, on various levels. Obviously, you need to take the political context into consideration. And that's our big challenge at this point in time, because it's a different type of politics that is, has been shaped in the USA. And that's our biggest challenge at this point.
Well, I would think you need to be talking a lot more and a lot louder so that those that make decisions can hear that and reverse their decisions ASAP. Christoph van der Riede, really fascinating having a chat with you, Executive Director at the FW de Klerk Foundation. Thank you for your time. And I'm sure there must be a response on this. What do you make of this conversation, the different things that he said, the issues of redress and maybe the blunt instrument of employment equity, but the point that ultimately Afrikaners do enjoy privilege in South Africa, not just in the past tense, but even now, and that's significant. 086 000 2032. We'll take your calls just now. You can WhatsApp right away, text or voice note 0614 104 107, as well as, this, on social media. Use that hashtag, The National Pulse. Tag SFM Radio, tag me on the X or Twitter platform. Let's get talking. We talk about B20 and G20 right after this.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric, mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends. You need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
Okay, let's get your comments. I see others are Valerie driving. We'll get your call as soon as possible. Not quite now, in about 10 or 15 minutes' time, right? But let's talk about, well, we know about G20. What about B20? What's the difference between the two? And in fact, overall, if we need an explainer on what the purpose of G20 is and B20, let's talk about that now with Kes Kuvandia in just a moment, right? But make a note of this. The SASSA Gold Card beneficiaries can still come and collect their new Postbank Black Card. Avoid the risk of not receiving your grant. Join over 1.3 million beneficiaries that are already conveniently receiving their grant using the Postbank Black Card. There are multiple selected outlets nationwide where you can swap your SASSA Gold Card for the new Postbank Black Card. What do you need to do? Dial *120 *355 hash to find one near you. Standard rates apply. Postbank, your bank.
Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So let's do that and just talk about G20, B20 and the relationship between the two and where it all fits in. Kes Kuvandia is the B20 Sherpa. Kes, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashraf, and thanks for having me.
I think a good point to start with is exactly that. You're the B20 Sherpa. What does that mean?
The Sherpa is a sort of B20 term, and it essentially means that I lead and guide the B20 this year. In sort of normal parlance would sort of be the equivalent of the CEO of the B20.
And I think about, obviously, we think of the Sherpas that guide people up Mount Everest and this important role they play. And I think that gives you symbolically the sense of the importance of your role, right? How then does, first of all, well done on that position. I think it's hugely significant. How then does then B20 tie in with overall G20? Where's the difference?
Well, the B20 is a forum where we bring together C-suite people from businesses in the G20 countries, as well as business organizations in the G20 countries. We also including C-suite people from the rest of the continent. And through a series of 8 task forces, we manage a process where people from the G20 countries which make up these task forces will go through a process of debate and discussion on policy issues related to each area. And then hopefully toward the end of August, beginning of September, we come out with policy recommendations for each of these areas from a business point of view, which we hand over to our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to put into the G20 process.
And
the G20...
and how does that feed in? So you make recommendations. Is it a case of President will accept your recommendations based upon, the B20 and what it stands for, its own stature, or is it simply recommendations and it's up for him to consider and reject if he chooses to?
Well, it's recommendations, but not up to him. It's recommendations that the G20 governments will look at.
Okay.
We hand over to our president because we are the host for the G20 this year. He will then put that into the G20 process for consideration in the run-up to the G20 summit in November this year. And we will use September and October as an advocacy period. So we will advocate with our government. We will enable advocacy with other G20 governments to accept as many of our recommendations as possible. And we will then know when they issue at the summit a communique or an agreement, whatever they arrive at. At that stage, we'll know what part of our recommendations have been accepted.
Is it too early to indicate what sort of line that you may follow or push?
Look, it is early, but if you look at the B20 theme, it's inclusive growth, prosperity in a cooperating world. And so what we want to, and task forces range from trade and industry to energy mix and just transition to education and employment to infrastructure and finance, business ethics, through to digital transformation, to food security and agriculture, to industrial transformation. And each of these task forces, we will try to manage so it comes out with at the most 2 to 3 recommendations. And those recommendations must talk to how in those areas and how those areas contribute to inclusive growth, contribute to prosperity in the G20 countries, and contribute and do that in a cooperative way, which is particularly important in our current geopolitical climate.
And I understand that from a South African perspective, the B20 is effectively formed by, you can correct the terminology, delegates or representatives that originally emanate from, Business Leadership SA and Business Unity SA. Have I got that right?
No, the host for the B20 is Business Unity South Africa.
Okay.
So the chair of the B20 is Nkosi Mgojo, the president of Business Unity South Africa. BUSA has asked BLSA to work with them on this and support them. So the co-chair is the chair of Business Leadership South Africa, Nku Nyembele. Mm-hmm. And then we put the Sherpa, and then we put together a secretariat of about people under the leadership of Anthony Costa, who used to be in the presidency, seconded by Nedbank. That finished last year. Nedbank has agreed to second him to the B20 till the end of this year. So that's a structure as such. Mm-hmm. We'll also have a local business advisory council made up of CEOs in South Africa, and an international business advisory caucus made up of global CEOs and past chairs of the B20. And we'll use both those structures to just report to them share with them on an ongoing basis the policy proposals coming out of the task forces so that they can comment on them, and then to also use them to advocate in September and October.
Well, I was having a chat with my producers, Temba and Keys, and suggesting that perhaps, we need to, in the run-up to, the G20 summit, have regular B20, G20, G20 Watch, B20 Watch over the next few months, because I think it's that important. So we probably will have lots of conversations with you about that. But maybe just the last thing for now, right? Of course, we're all aware of the simmering tensions between South Africa and the USA. And as it turns out, the USA, if South Africa are the incumbent for the G20, the USA will take over at the end of the year. How do you get a sense? Is it early days to understand how G20 or B20 will manage that process?
Well, look, the G20 will have to manage the politics. We want to basically buckle down and do the work we need to do as business representatives. Our counterparts in the USA are the American Chamber of Commerce in Washington. They attended our launch, as did some American companies, and they have assured us that American business is fully behind the B20 South Africa, and that's the basis on which we're working. So some American C-suite people are co-chairs of some of the task forces. They're participating in the task forces. So we will continue on that basis. Obviously, depending on where the politics go, if we have to make any comments on that, we will, but we're not going to get involved in the politics. That's government-to-government stuff. But we're happy that American business is supporting the B20.
Okay, and we'll certainly talk more. Carry on.
We're in constant touch with the American Chamber of Commerce. In fact, we put together a sort of troika between Brazil, the previous chair, ourselves, and the U.S., to ensure a smooth handover to the U.S. at the end of the year.
And I take it at this point in time, it's all thumbs up. You are able to work together outside of the global political focus on South Africa anyway. Okay, we'll have more chats about this, I'm sure, about that, Casco Vanya, in the days, the months, and the weeks ahead. It's an important conversation we need to be having. But for now, Casco Vanya, the B20 Sherpa, thanks for your time, and best wishes on this critically important leadership position on behalf of, the B20, but certainly South Africa as well. Much appreciate your time. Let's get to the news headlines. It's just gone 3:30. Here's Jolani Tulo.
Good afternoon. Making headlines, the Agricultural Business Chamber has questioned the methodology behind the 31 tariff imposed by the US on South Africa. This follows President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff spree that saw him impose double-digit tariff hikes on a large number of US trading partners, including South Africa. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says no foreign DNA evidence could be found on the 7-year-old survivor of an alleged sexual assault. The child is from Matatiele in the Eastern Cape province. And finally, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington will know soon whether Russia is serious about peace in Ukraine and will judge that by Moscow's actions, not its words. His comments come amid growing concerns in Ukraine and among European leaders about what they say are delaying tactics by President Vladimir Putin. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Pretoria queuing towards Rigel Avenue, the R24 westbound in Edenvale queuing towards the N12 highway merge, and the N12 eastbound in Eldorado Park has a crash on the link to the N1 north. In KZN, the N3 westbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck before Market Road exit. All lanes are open, and Umgeni Road slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the Two Oceans Marathon Expo and registration event takes place at DHL Stadium until 8 p.m. this evening, so delays are possible on local routes. The N2 is slow moving through Somerset West, and the N1 outbound queuing towards Okavango Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkapele.
Tumi, you have got some news about one of the most significant midfielders in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Yes, we start things off with football news just coming in this afternoon. Kevin De Bruyne has announced that he's leaving Manchester City at the end of the season. The 33-year-old joined City back in 2015 from Wolfsburg and will definitely go down as one of the Premier League's greatest players after winning 6 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, 5 Carabao Cups, and the Champions League in an unprecedented period of success for City. So the big question is, what's next for De Bruyne? And I think for me, the two most likely destinations would either be Saudi Arabia or the MLS, because both leagues where clubs have expressed interest to De Bruyne and to his people as a whole. But we'll definitely be keeping a close eye to see where he's going next. Elsewhere, Banyana face Malawi in 2 international friendlies in Soweto tomorrow and then on Tuesday as the team continues preparing for the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in July. But more than that, it's a special one for Mpumi Nyandeni, who's up for her 150th cap, and Nokomatlo, who's set to get 176th cap for Banyana. They're going to hang up their boots on the international football level side, so a great way to send them off. And here's Coach Desiree Ellis.
I think it's important at home because you're playing in front of your home crowd, to say, for the crowd also to say thank you to the players, because away from home it doesn't mean anything. You don't have your home support. I mean, maybe their families want to come down to be able to see that send-off and be part of the send-off. And if you have it at home, obviously you don't get that experience. It's just like another game. So it's important. We also saw last year when we played the USA, they did similarly with 2 of their players at home. The stadium was packed out, and what a wonderful send-off for them. So we want to do similar things.
Still staying with football, South African Football Players Union Secretary General Nhlanhla Shabalala says that they're still hopeful that Royal AM status can be rescued between now and next Thursday. The Premier Soccer League's Board of Governors is expected to meet next Thursday to decide on the decision to expel Royal AM for failing to fulfill its obligations and irregularly transferring its shares. And Shabalala says that they hope that the club can still be saved.
With the limited chances, yes. And in football terms, but you must carry on until the fat lady sings. Until the last whistle. Yes, you can play to the last whistle. So it's exactly that. It's still a window of opportunity. We know that the process is complex and is also time-consuming, but we hope that there is a way that they can find in order to sort this matter out before it gets to the BOG, where this matter is hanging in the thread, because we don't know the based on the deliberations, because the matter is complicated insofar as the discussions with the points, who's relegated, who's going to play the playoffs, and all sorts of things. So it's nobody's, I think, guess as to what's going to happen. But if it gets to that level, it becomes too tricky, as it were. So we hope the situation can be saved before then.
Moving on to rugby, the 2024-25 Sevens champions will be crowned this weekend as the circuit reaches its climax in Singapore, with the Blitzboks looking to secure the top 4 position. Currently 4th in the standings after 9-place finish in Hong Kong last week. The Springbok Sevens hold a slim 2-point advantage over 5th placed France, and maintaining this position would give South Africa variable seeding benefits heading into next month's Sevens World Championships in Los Angeles. Then in marathon news, around 31,000 runners from around the world will take to the streets this weekend in the Two Oceans Marathon. Tomorrow, 14,000 runners will take on the 56-kilometer ultra marathon, while 17,000 runners will participate in the half marathon. And Izette van Zyl says that she's hoping to be the surprise package this weekend.
Going into this year, the team being so strong, I think that's why we're going to see faster times, because it's not going to be maybe a Gerda race on her own. There's going to be a race actually, and I think that is what people need, is that excitement. I don't say Gerda's races isn't exciting. That's always exciting seeing her run. But I think a race makes it more glued to the TV, and I think this year, hopefully that will go as planned for just a Hollywood team, making it a nail-biting race.
Anything's off with motorsport. Oscar Piastri went fastest today in a McLaren 1-2 during a chaotic second practice for the Japanese Grand Prix that was red flagged 4 times, as Red Bull's debutant Yuki Tsunoda came 18th. Now Piastri clocked a fastest lap of 1 minute 28.114 seconds to a Pep teammate and championship leader Lando Norris by 0.049 seconds in dry and sunny conditions at Suzuka. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now, but before I leave, I do understand that there is a voice note from one of our listeners.
Okay.
Let's hear it. Okay, I think it's coming.
Flores here from the beautiful Western Cape. Ashraf, just a question for Tumi, or a remark. Pirates and or Jose Rivero should be upfront and honest with his supporters, man. He must just tell us that he has been headhunted by another European team or an African country. And then my shortlist for the next Pirate manager would be Pizzo, Gavin Hunt, and or Benny in the 18 area. Have a good job. Bye-bye.
That's a long short list, man. 3 names on a short list, you know.
But very interesting perspective. Listen, in terms of Jose Rivero, I do know that there have been rumors with regards to the Moroccan national team wanting him. However, from my understanding is that he's yet to make a decision with regards to any club that wants him, only at a later stage. Right now, he's going home to spend time with his family.
Okay. I've also heard about Saudi Arabia beckoning. But you know what? This thing about, and I'm going back to what Florence is saying, I'm leaving for personal reasons. I mean, really? You don't become a football coach for personal reasons. You become a coach because you love it. That's the nature of the game.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's
Alex Ferguson tried to leave Man United for personal reasons. He wanted to go shopping with his wife, and then he stayed another 10 years. It just doesn't work.
Family is personal reasons, after all.
I'm saying it doesn't work with football. You don't become a coach then. Okay, more sport in an hour.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit cfi.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
WAFCON reigning champions Banyana Banyana are back on the battlefield against the Scorchers, ramping up their preparations for the upcoming Women Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. This is the international friendly. Witness the African champs, South Africa versus Malawi, this Saturday 5 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
At Buco, we know that every successful building project starts with quality and ends with pride. From small contractors to big builders, we're here to ensure that you have the tools, materials, and support to do the job right the first time. With Buco, you're never building alone. We are right here, ready to make your project a lasting success, from the foundation to paint. For every step and every build, begin with Buco.
Buco. Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to the National Pulse. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, we'll take your calls pretty shortly, but let's talk about another issue around banking. And it's so important, banking insurance, that relates to you, right? So, interestingly, a year ago this month, the Corporation for Deposit Insurance, and the acronym there is CODI, was founded. So you may wonder why the need to discuss it now. Well, one thing we do know, or you should know, is that CODI is part of South Africa's financial sector safety net in the event of a bank failure. Just think about some of the significant failings we've had in recent times, and what that means to you if you, for example, were banking with VBS or Itala, right? So let's talk about this with Sabina Mohammed, who's the CEO of the Corporation for Deposit Insurance, for CODI. Sabina, I appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon, listeners.
Thank you. So
thank you for having me.
Thank you. So 1 year later, how is that this banking insurance changed the terrain for depositors in South Africa?
Well, Ashraf, in the past year, CODI has established a deposit insurance fund. Currently, it's 19 billion rand strong. So if anything were to happen to a registered bank, CODI has sufficient funds to protect the depositors for their products that are qualifying for protection. So it has strengthened the financial safety net, it's made it more resilient, and we are ready for anything that could happen.
Because in the past, what happened in the past? Somebody would put money into a bank, let's say 100,000 rands or 1 million rands, and then something goes wrong with the bank, and let's say the bank collapses. What would have happened then?
In the past, there was a lot of uncertainty for the depositors. So firstly, they did not know if they would be protected. If they were, what amount would be protected, or even which products would be protected. So in terms of the legislative framework that established CODI, we specify exactly the types of products that we cover. So we cover savings deposits, transactional account, fixed and notice deposits, term deposits, and we protect individuals and non-financial businesses. So there's very much certainty for the depositor now who will be protected, which products are protected, and then we protect them up to 100,000 per depositor per bank. So I think firstly the certainty, but secondly, in the past there was no fund created to protect them. So it used to be money provided by government, so the taxpayers had to pay for the failure of that bank. So now we've got the fund in place, there's certainty for depositors. So I think that's a long way in making things more certain, and there's a higher level of protection for the depositors now.
Okay, but just to confirm, you're saying 100,000 rands? I just want to be clear about it. What do you mean there? 100,000 rands per
depositor, per bank. So if you had accounts at Bank A and Bank B and they both failed at the same time, you could be protected up to 100,000 at each of these banks. We do protect what you've got at the bank, so it's not a standard 100,000 per depositor. If you had 50,000, it would be fully protected. If you had 150,000, you'll be protected up to the 100,000 rand, and then you would have to wait for the liquidation process for that additional amount. But okay, I must also specify that at the 100,000 rand, 90% of the depositors in South Africa is fully covered.
Okay, because that's the level of the maximum deposits they would hold. What it doesn't do then, of course, is cover people who have deposits of 1 million rand, 2 million. It could be individuals, or it could also be businesses, right? I mean, that 100,000 wouldn't shift their position at all, really.
Well, yes. So they'll get 100,000. It's the remaining amount that they would have to wait for the liquidation process. So we do cover businesses, but only non-financial businesses.
And to what degree? Again, the 100,000 maximum?
It's 100,000 maximum. So in terms of the law, CODI also has an obligation to assess the adequacy of this 100,000 every 5 years. So we are busy establishing a process just to make sure, is that limit of cover still sufficient? Should we consider expanding the scope of our coverage? So in other words, do we add additional products to that protection that we offer? Because it's ultimately important that the protection remains relevant for South Africans.
How has this been received by the public, from 1 year ago to now?
It's been received really well. We get a lot of questions in the Cody inbox. There's a lot of questions about which banks do Cody cover, for example. So we cover registered banks. So a bank would have to be registered with a prudential authority for Cody to be able to protect their depositors. We've had a lot of questions about which products are covered. So we've also spent a lot of time engaging with the public through interviews like this. We've also engaged with the banks. So banks have an obligation to communicate about Cody and the protection and the limitations of the protection to the depositors as well.
Okay, and I take it the website, if they need to know more, is just Cody, C-O-D-I, or what?
So if you want to go to the website, you have to go to the Reserve Bank website, click on what we do, then there's a deposit insurance tab, and there's a list of all the member banks, all the registered banks that are members of Cody and whose depositors we protect.
I see, I understand that. Okay, I appreciate you sharing this information with us. Sabina Mohammed, CEO of the Corporation for Deposit Insurance, or Cody as we know it, a subsidiary of the South African Reserve Bank, launched a year ago, that gives you protection up to 100,000 rands per person per bank. So you have 200,000 deposit in the bank, you get 100,000 up front, and the balance, you're part of a claim in case a bank goes bust, which often means, you could get 10 cents in the rand, which is really not much anyway. But this is certainly a good start. We'll chat to, by the way, Sandile Swana, who's got a take on South Africa's budget 2025. Let's call it court versus political. Court wins or political wins. We'll talk about that after 4 o'clock. So listen out for that. We'll also have a chat with the the Vice Chancellor of the University of Witwatersrand as part of our Friday fireside chat. I'm talking about Prof. Zebulon Vilakazi. So that comes up later. But what happens now is I get to hear your voice because I want to get a sense of your pulse right after this.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who side-foots it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Looking at some of your tweets, in fact, Ernest saying, referring to the issue of the Afrikaners and their refugee status in the USA, it'll also be tough for South African farmers, who are, some of them, are supporters and sponsors of AfriForum, but perhaps you can tell us more about what that you really mean. Let's get to some of the callers. Mojalefa in the Northwest, go for it. Hello.
Oh, yeah, Ashraf, how are you?
I'm very good indeed, right? What's your point?
I'm doing so well. the truth that was said by the director of the Clark Foundation. That guy is so honest. They are still enjoying the privilege of being white in South Africa, and you can tell that this guy is so honest with what he has just said now, and they're gonna regret. Those ones who are going to leave South Africa are going to regret. I'm telling you, it's not something so simple to leave your own country and thinking that you're gonna enjoy the very same privilege in another country. It's gonna be so difficult for them.
In fact, many have said that, and I know this is just arbitrary, right? But many have said that the Afrikaners who are bound to leave would be those Afrikaners who are struggling to get positions right now, which is not the majority. I mean, there's rich and wealthy in every community, right? But those that are established, who are linked to businesses or institutions, there's just no motivation for them to go. I mean, why would they uproot themselves into a land of muddy waters compared to where they are right now? So, yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true, Ashraf. And even if you can just listen to what has been said by the DA leader yesterday, I think during Parliament when he answered the questions there, you can see that these people are really enjoying their privilege and they are really criticizing AfriForum, whatever that they are doing. And for us as black people, we see AfriForum as one of the yeast in a traditional beer that is really brewing.
Well, maybe that's the point that we made earlier. So how do we get these voices, like the FW, the Clark Foundation's voices, to be heard louder than AfriForum, not just in South Africa, but certainly in the capitals of the world, because I think it's that important. Moja Lefa, thanks for your time. Much appreciate your comments. Certainly got me thinking. In Frontline KZN, what's your point?
My brother, thank you for taking my call. You see, my brother, the gentleman appreciates his honesty, but the problem, when he says he has got a problem with Emblem Liquidity, I think he must go and read Section 9 of the Constitution, where it says, subsection 2 of it, Emblem Liquidity specifically states that legislation aiming at protecting and advancing certain categories of person may be made into law by formal. Emblem Liquidity does this in its third chapter, which is affirmative action. When they say they appreciate the Bill of Rights, they must also appreciate Emblem Liquidity because it's part of Section 9 of the Constitution, equality.
Okay, but I mean, let's not get into the detail now. I think the point he's making, in principle, he's for the redress, but he's saying some aspects of the redress don't play out well enough, and that is why you do get people who feel left out, and that's what he said. That's what we need to be talking about down the line. So, yeah.
My brother, for far too long, we've been bending as Africans. He's even saying that they are so privileged as Afrikaners. From what? From the atrocities that have caused on us. So they need to rectify that. For how long we must bend while they are busy celebrating that they are enjoying
Okay, and in Tlanta, you've made your point, and you made your point very strongly. I mean, I just wonder, and I'll put it to all of you, listening, right, is that, I mean, as part of a reconciliation process, does it have to be a case of whatever party A or people A has done wrong, that everything must be removed from them? Or do we say, hold it, we understand we're in it together, we've been put together, that's how destiny works, and we have to work together, and that does mean some compromises must take place. If not that, then you have to wipe the slate clean completely with everything that ever happened in the country. And how does that mean you progress as a group of people and as a nation? Just think about it. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. Butana in Rosebank, go for it. You want to also talk about affirmative action, yeah?
Good afternoon, my brother. Thank you very much. ANC was hopeless in implementing affirmative action. ANC implemented nepotism, crooks, and thieves that were running amok in all government departments, and the white people, in particular the Afrikaners, were not impacted. Their farms were not impacted. Their business were not impacted. I respectfully differ with that gentleman. Thank you very much.
All right, you made your points. Differ with that gentleman, Butana in Rosebank, but in suggesting that a lot of what the ANC did was just wrong in terms of their implementation of, things like affirmative action. Right, Vuyiswa in the Parktown North region, that's in Joburg. Go for it, Vuyiswa.
Yeah, thanks, Ashraf, for taking my call.
Thank you.
Producer there. I want to just tell people, having grown up in the Western world, in London, USA, you name it, Canada, in exile from your childhood, you won't do anything. You can try and convince them to stay. White people, when they've decided, they've decided. So it's better we try and build a country and forget begging people, sucking up or wanting. You're not going to do anything about it. When they've decided that they've decided. So let them do their own thing and let us build the country.
When you say let them do their own thing, which them are you referring to?
The thing that those who want to go, let them go. No?
Those that want to go abroad,
yes. Why must you? Even your own father, when you decide to go and stay in an apartment, it's actually in African culture, where your father say you are grown up now, you can go and start your own, and gives you a piece of land, which they've deprived us from. Them, the African and whoever. Right. So let them go. Stop mourning. Stop lamenting. You're not going to do anything.
Okay, but I don't think anybody's mourning. I don't think anybody's mourning at all.
No, but some people sound that desperate.
No, but some people is not the majority. I mean,
No, what I'm saying, yes, it's not the majority, but let's stop. Even this airtime we're giving them is too much.
Who's giving them airtime? I don't know. We're giving you airtime too.
No, we can arrange other things and build the country. Let them go, they will come back. It's not going to be green over there.
Okay, got that.
The grass won't be green there. That I know.
Making her point.
Yeah.
The grass will not be green. I've heard that. It's actually pretty white in winter because it's all snowy and icy, and we don't have those things. Although we've had lots of rain in many parts of the country, again, the last 2 days or so, and some may say it's been like the wettest seasons for a long, long time in some parts of South Africa. Those that have summer rains, it's been like almost wintry summer rains. Does that sound like a contradiction? Think about that. Right, we're going to have a very important conversation with Prof. Zebulon Vilakazi. Well, part of his own life journey, and the fireside chat coming up after 5. But before that, Sandile Swana, he's going to talk about, the budget from a court perspective and a political solution perspective. That comes up next. Don't miss that. Here's the news. It's 4 o'clock with Jolani.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories. The SAWA Agricultural Business Chamber questions methodology behind tariff imposed on South Africa, and no foreign DNA evidence found on the 7-year-old survivor of an alleged sexual assault in the Eastern Cape. Good afternoon. The Agricultural Business Chamber has questioned the methodology behind the 31% tariff imposed by the U.S. on South Africa. This follows President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff spree that saw him impose double-digit tariffs on a large number of U.S. trading partners, including South Africa. Agricultural Business Chamber Fruit Desk Manager Wolf Broad.
Our problem with the methodology is, and many economists are saying the same thing, this is not based in traditional trade economics or calculations that are used. It appears to be, unfortunately, a fairly arbitrary, one-size-fits-all, and you end up with these weird distortions where Lesotho is now down for a tariff of 50%. So the problem is 30% is an extremely high number. It's trying to pass down any sort of buying chain or pass on to retailers, or retailers pass on to consumers, and it's a very quick shock. And there isn't really any way to offset much of this.
A man has been sentenced to life imprisonment in the Pietermaritzburg High Court for the murder of a woman from the Kwanyavu area near Camperdown. The woman was killed for participating in the 2021 local government elections. NPA spokesperson Natasha Ramkisoon Kara says Qalani Mdluli was shot dead at home the day after the elections.
The Pietermaritzburg High Court has sentenced Sifundo Raphael Ngubane to life imprisonment for the murder of a woman in Camperdown. Both Ngubane and the woman lived in the same area, and during November 2021, there was ongoing tension between the various political groups in the area. In addition to the life sentence, Ngubane was deemed unfit to possess a firearm, and the court ordered that his firearm is forfeited to the state. The NPA welcomes a successful prosecution. Acts of political intolerance and gender-based violence will not be tolerated by the courts. We hope that sentences of this nature have the necessary deterrent effect.
A charge of murder has now been added for 3 accused linked to a string of church robberies in and around Johannesburg. The added charge stems from one of the accused dying at the scene following a shootout with police during their arrest. 2 others are still recovering in hospital after a vehicle accident as they fled police. The 3 were initially charged with business breaking, possession of unlicensed firearms, attempted murder and reckless driving. They've appeared before the Roodepoort Magistrates Court, where the matter has been postponed to Wednesday next week. State Prosecutor Clarissa Rust.
The wife of one of the accused did indicate to me, Your Worship, that they at some point had appointed Mr. Sadiki, Your Worship. It is the name the court would have noted from the record.
Yes.
She attempted to contact him, Your Worship, and the last word I received on that is that there is a request that we rather postpone this matter, Your Worship, so that they can sort out his appearance. That's the final position on that. And today, Your Worship, the state will be adding a count of murder to the range of charges they are currently facing. Our investigations, Your Worship, have by no means been finalised. It's too soon.
Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says no foreign DNA evidence could be found on the 7-year-old survivor of an alleged sexual assault. The child is from Matatiele in the Eastern Cape. Mchunu says, however, there are 3 persons of interest who emerged during police investigations. He has told the media in Pretoria that further investigations are taking place.
DNA testing was done on the victim as per procedure. The outcome of those who were dealing with the matter was that no foreign DNA could be found on the victim. But in the course of time, there were 3 persons of interest who emerged that then required further DNA testing to be done so that whatever would be cleaned, whatever information would be cleaned from the DNA testing on the persons of interest could help in the case.
British police have charged actor-comedian Russell Brand with rape and a multiple counts of assault over a number of allegations between 1999 and 2005. Brand, who is the former husband of US pop singer Katy Perry and once one of Britain's most high-profile comedians and broadcasters, had repositioned himself in recent years and as an internet social commentator. In a statement, police say the 50-year-old, who lives in Oxfordshire in southern England, was charged with 1 count of rape, 1 count of indecent assault, 1 count of oral rape, and 2 counts of sexual assault, and that the charges relate to 4 separate women. Recapping the top story this hour, the Agricultural Business Chamber has questioned the methodology behind the 31% tariff imposed by the US on South Africa. This follows President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff spree that saw him impose double-digit tariff hikes on a large number of US trading partners, including South Africa. For SAFM News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
In sports this hour, Marizanne Cup ruled out of Tri-Nation Series against India and Sri Lanka. Young South African players eye their moment on the world stage at the Billie Jean King Cup, and sprint sensation Tebogo Letsile sets his sights on the 200-meter world record. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 northbound in Centurion has a crash before Jean Avenue, the M1 southbound in Harton Estate queuing towards Glenhove Road, the M1 northbound in Sandton queuing towards Woodmead Drive, and Mabopane Highway northbound in Pretoria has a crash near Brits Road. In KZN, the N3 has stop-go controls at Van Riemen's Pass to clear an earlier truck fire incident This is causing heavy traffic delays in that vicinity, so please be patient. The N2 southbound has a stationary vehicle after the M41 Gateway exit and the N3 westbound queuing towards Cliffdale. In Cape Town, the N7 northbound has a crash near Plattekloof Road. All lanes are open. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 northbound slow moving towards Kuburg Interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Souček, and there is the goal, and he's scored a few this season.
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier, who side-foots it past Vicario, and that is brilliant from Bournemouth.
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Hi, I'm Zycard. Catch me every Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Spotlight as we bring you blow-by-blow sporting action, news. That's Spotlight every Saturday. You don't want to miss it.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Durban North. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
You know, here's the thought based upon the conversation we had earlier on, particularly with the representative from the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, right? You know, do you agree that redress is important, redress and transformation? I don't think there's a debate about it. It has to happen. The question is, amongst the tools that have been used, you know, affirmative action, and then BEE, and then the overall scoreboard of employment equity. Do you think that it's been implemented well enough? Or do you think, like many other things in the world, it can be revised? And if you revise it, how would you revise it? And that's really what the F.W. de Klerk Foundation is suggesting we do anyway, right? So what do you think? I mean, I'd be very curious to get your thoughts on this issue and to call in, not quite now, but you can WhatsApp right away, okay? And if you're doing that, you know the numbers. You should say the numbers like permanently. To call in, it's 086 000 2032. WhatsApp 0614 104 107. In the meantime, let's get on to something that's also really important. You know, the issues of the budget speech and the budget adoption has dominated our lives this week, if not even before that. Well, many people have different opinions about it, okay? Sandile Swana certainly has. He's a political and governance analyst, and he's got comments on that. So we thought let's pick his brain about it. Sandile, good to connect with you once again. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, perhaps recap, because whatever happened then at the National Assembly, then we understood that there were two groups of, you know, political parties, one that were completely supportive of, let's call it the ANC position or the GNU position, but then there was a significant member of the GNU that fell outside of that, and I'm talking about the DA and maybe a couple of other parties like the EFF as well as the MK party, right? And then first things first, the DA decided, well, they're going to take this issue to the High Court. Now, you have a particular thought around, you know, court battles and political battles. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so you will find that both the members of parliament and the members of the judiciary actually have commented that, you know, we don't want to be running a judiciocracy. In other words, instead of a parliament, you have the judiciary doing the work of the parliament. So those are the dangers of when you have a political problem, you take it to the judiciary. And now what tends to also happen is that after reviewing the matter, the judiciary then sends it back to Parliament to process it properly. So that's the first problem that I have with this idea. The second idea is that when you look at the politics of it, when I try to trace out these reports, the one, obviously, what happened in Parliament, we saw it. What we did not see was what happened at the committee. But there seems to be a view that the people who had the majority in the committee, in the Standing Committee on Finance, the ones who had the majority are happy with their majority decision. Is the one who lost the vote in the committee that actually are unhappy. And then the ones who had the majority in the committee also had the majority in Parliament. So when you go to court, and it's clear that you didn't have the majority in any event, and then let's say within the next 30 days, ANC actually and Action SA and BOSA actually agreed to cancel the 0.5% VAT.
Yeah.
Then what are you going to go to court and talk about?
So you, and I mean, as you know, certainly BOSA has got that view, and I think to a degree, Rise Mzansi may have a similar view, but definitely Action SA has that view that they're supportive of, let's call it, the ANC position, insofar as the ANC is committed to completely re-looking at the issue of VAT, and they will find ways in the 30 days how they can compensate the loss of income from the VAT in other ways, right? So you're saying that while this process takes place, if a deal is struck then within the 30 days, then the court issue just falls away completely, and it's a waste of time.
Yes, this is the thing. And also, the other thing, from a community perspective, there are people who seem to be very worried, about the noisiness of the process. Some are worried that the rand will collapse. Some are worried that will be a banana republic. But it's the first time. It's the first time that the budget has been scrutinized to this extent, because this ANC, and I'm not saying it happened only because it was the ANC. This budget have been rubber stamped for maybe 15, 16 years with dire consequences for GDP growth and the increase in unemployment.
But it was done specifically because you had a majority party. So the party would have internal battles, and we don't even know about those internal battles. But once they come up with an agreement, it's not contested up to now. And this year has changed. What does that tell us? Does it indicate, in a bizarre way, now whether you want to call it GNU or coalition or whichever other Stokvel that you want to bring up, right? Doesn't this confirm to all of us that there is now strength in the diversity of the running of the government versus a one party that has the majority vote? Never mind, in the diversity, you will have many arguments, just like we have arguments every day of the week anyway.
I agree with you, and it's one of my favorite positions to say we must actually emphasize the diversity of views and the diversity of perspectives, even inside the party. I was happy earlier on during the time when these disagreements started, because Masangwanye, the chairman who is in the ANC, by the way, who started to say that he actually supports the South African Receiver of Revenue, that actually, let's not increase the VAT, let us rather go along with the Receiver of Revenue, who says he can actually collect this money on his own. So he was already differing with his own party, the chairman of the Standing Committee on Finance. So I agree with the view that we must have a multi-party democracy, and we must also have just a culture of understanding that to get to the best solution, have that diversity if you can.
Okay. Now let's go back to the DA, because clearly they, perhaps of all the parties, have found themselves most frozen compared to others, because they were on the inside compared to the EFF and the MK party, who were on the outside of government, right? So if not going to court, what should the DA then have done? I mean, what options did they have?
These negotiations, were tough for all sides, for both sides. And to me, it appears to me that the disagreement is how do you call it? The disagreement is actually not on the content. I think the other parties, like Mmusi Maimane, for instance, and what do they call him? Mashaba. Both of them actually oppose this VAT thing.
Yeah.
Right? DA opposes this VAT thing, and so on. So the question now was, how do you go about it, getting the ANC to that place where they realize that this thing cannot go ahead? Because there's a part to this, to me, that made this thing so difficult that is not being discussed. Nobody's actually discussing, because I'm worried that the role, for instance, the ANC may have been amenable to this. What I do not know is what is it that they agreed with the IMF. Are you aware that the IMF said that, first of all, they don't agree with the receiver of revenue? Number two, that South African population, the nation itself, can actually stomach up to 19% VAT. Because I cannot see the reason why the ANC is stuck on this. So I do not know what else the DA could have done, what else anybody else could have done to get this thing to move, because there's something that is tying up the ANC into this VAT thing.
Okay, let's lastly look forward to what may happen. So what we have right now is a commitment by some parties, and the parties you've mentioned, Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Mmusi Maimane's Bossa as well, together with, of course, the ANC and their other allies, to work together to try and stave off a VAT increase and have to find a solution. On the other end, you got the DA and the EFF and the MK party, who have already been very clear, absolutely no to the VAT increase. Now, what's likely to happen in the next 30 days?
The question of what's likely to happen is very tricky. The ANC has to honor the agreement, because I think that the backlash of forcing that VAT increase to go on in view of the upcoming elections next year, it will be devastating to them, because Action SA and Bossa will turn against them. The DA and what's her name and the others are already against them. It's just going to be a fiasco. So that is a consideration. For other reasons beyond this fight over VAT, I think the ANC wants to reconfigure the GNU.
You think they
I think that is likely to happen?
Yeah. You think they want to? The ANC wants to reconfigure the GNU, and that means what? Clearly, Action SA would be part of it, something they said they'll never do. But where does the DA then fit into this?
So it's about reducing cabinet posts for some people and admitting new people. It's not going to be an easy thing to do, but I think the ANC is at that point now.
Okay, let's leave it at that, and I'm sure we'll have many chats between now and day 30. Thank you for your time, Sandi Leswana. Lots to consider regarding that. By the way, what do you think of it? What do you make of that conversation and the insights that he shared in terms of what's going to happen between now and day 30 with all the different parties that make up the country, South Africa, both inside government and outside government? This is the National Pulse.
Mzansi, you don't want to miss out on Powerball, which is estimated at a massive 100 million rand jackpot this Friday. Don't delay. Play Powerball for an estimated 100 million rand jackpot today, and you could be celebrating millions. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM. Prime time all day long. You're listening to the National Pulse.
We were going to play some sound clips from the police ministry, the Minister of Police coming up shortly, well, in about 10 minutes' time. And don't forget, we've got the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Witwatersrand, Professor Zebulon Vilakazi, coming up as the fireside chat. So for an hour, from 5 o'clock to 6, listen to it, ask questions, get your chummies to listen as well. But let's talk now about Defend South Africa. Now, you may be aware of this. Defend South Africa and other civil rights groups marched in Pretoria today. Why? Well, you think like we have a dull and boring world? Not at all. They've called now for President Cyril Ramaphosa's immediate resignation. And the marchers assembled at the old Patco bus depot in Marabastad. I'm thinking of the hustle and bustle banner of Marabastad in Pretoria. They proceeded to the union buildings. So let's find out more and really what their plan is with Emmanuel Masowa, who's the Defend South Africa's national organizer. Emmanuel, appreciate your time. You're now connected to the National Pulse.
Hi, how are you? How are you, South Africans, fellow South Africans? This is Emmanuel.
Thank you. Well, I'm fine. I don't know whether the president's fine if you call for his resignation. Why so?
Oh, well, it's quite simple. There are a number of issues that South Africans are not, especially Defend SA, are not, how can I put it, the president has not accounted for. One of them is the Palafala debacle, and then the other one is when he ascended into power within the ANC, there's a sealed bank statement. So we are saying, why is why is there a hush-hush situation around those bank statements? Why are they sealed? So we are calling for accountability. Our economy right now is in shambles. The government cannot even put together a budget for their fiscus. So it's a quite number of issues. And then we're saying that this president is not fit to be president. He's not fit to lead our country. We therefore call for his resignations. And there's also a number of other
okay.
What you call.
So is the call? I mean, you mentioned Palapala and other things. Is the call because you think he's committed to acts that are illegal? If that's the case, and I know it's been investigated, then the law must take its course. Or is this just your sense and your organization's sense that he's not fit to rule the country, and therefore we don't want him? Because clearly the other political parties don't agree with you because they're not doing that.
Well, every political party is inclined to their opinion, and I need to correct something. We are not a political party. We are a civic movement, and a civic movement includes each and every South African. We may differ in ideologies, but at the same time, we don't differ in. I think we don't differ in this thing. We have spoken to a lot of people on the ground, and they share the same sentiment. And the sentiment is, if we as the people cannot hold the people in power to accountability, then who will? There is a statement that says the people shall govern. And when will the people govern if we cannot hold them accountable? Why is everybody dodging the fact that Cyril came into power through the back door? And Cyril has sealed bank statements. Who funded Cyril? Who is the funder? Isn't it now, whatever that is happening in the state, time for payback? It's something that you actually have to look forward to.
Okay,
So
your point,
we-
but your point, why is everybody dodging it? So who, in your opinion, is actually dodging those questions?
I think the president is dodging those questions by sealing the bank statements. Simple. Why do you seal something that should be public knowledge? Why are you keeping it secret? It's a simple thing. I don't think it's something that you should actually. How can I put it? It's something that we can actually run away from. Why do you seal those bank statements? It's public knowledge. Let people know who funded you. Simple as all that.
So I'm going to say to you, and I'm not discussing whether you're right or wrong, and I think you made the point, you're not a political
Yes.
party, you're a civil rights movement,
100%.
and that's understood, right? But certainly the majority of people within the president's own party, the ANC, clearly they don't follow your line because they're not calling for his resignation, number one. And then the parties that make up the GNU, they're not calling for his resignation either.
Well, like I said when I started, is everybody is inclined to their opinion, everybody is inclined for their stance. But our stance is that the president should resign. And I think in the long run, because it's not only today, we are going to continue with this. I think in the long run, South Africans will finally join us. So in the long run, the message will be spread as it's being spread today.
How long do you think that long run will take?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it takes. South Africa is our country, and people need to be aware that we have a situation like this. So
I asked that
doesn't matter.
question because his second term of office is 5 years, and if this long run takes 4 years, then he's finished and clear anyway.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. My brother put me into a corner, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What we are calling for right now, at this point in juncture, is that he must resign.
Okay, that's the principle.
With immediate effect.
I hear that.
Immediate effect. Yes.
Appreciate that. Appreciate your time and your comments. And let's see if there's other reaction, not just from callers today, but certainly from society, people within political parties, outside in the next few days. Do you take that call seriously? Do you, in fact, want the president to resign, as Emmanuel Masawa certainly does? Emmanuel, thanks for your time. Defend South Africa's national organizer. Right. In fact, there's, I can also tell you now, don't forget, we've got lots of people wanting to comment. I know that. Let's just pick up on this one comment on BEE.
Good afternoon, it's Dumsa from Waterfall in KZN. I have a question with regard to the BEE in the context or in light of the official from the FW de Klerk Foundation. So if the BEE is not successful in the next 200 to 300 years in terms of redressing the injustices that happened in that period in the past, what will happen? Will it continue, will it stop, or will it be revised? What will happen?
Well, this is my quick answer. For me, everything is up for negotiation, isn't it? Up till this year, we never dreamt we'll have a GNU. We suddenly have a GNU, which is a response, whether you like it or not. It's a response to a condition at this moment in time. And then we've got the situation now where one party from the GNU is out and the other one's in. And again, it's a response to the budget debate for now. So to answer your question about the BEE, if BEE... And I'd like to go back to what was the original reason for BEE. Was it supposed to be broad-based economic empowerment for narrow groups of political, cadre deployments, which many suggest is what has happened, people with favor to the political elite? Or is it for creating equity, real meaningful investment in businesses for the majority of people? If it hasn't succeeded, there could be a call to say we agree with the principle, but let's re-look at that. That's just what I'm saying for now. If you have another view, I want to hear it. Let's get the news headlines. It's 4:30. Here's Jolani Tulo.
Thanks, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Making headlines, U.S. Republican Congressman Troy Nehls has introduced legislation into the House of Representatives to support President Donald Trump's executive order on resettling Afrikaner refugees in the United States. The Agricultural Business Chamber has questioned the methodology behind the 31% tariff imposed by the U.S. on South Africa. And finally, Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi has admitted that he didn't consult when he gazetted regulations last month banning the manufacture, sale and import of food products with cannabis and hemp. The presidency later reversed the decision. For SFM News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 westbound inland Syria has a crash reported before the R512 Malibongwe Drive. The M1 southbound in central Johannesburg has a crash after Crown Interchange, and the M1 southbound has heavy traffic towards Boysons. In KZN, on the N2 northbound, a stationary vehicle before the M41 Gateway exit and the N3 westbound queuing towards Cliffdale. On the N3, there's stop-go controls at Van Riemen's Pass to clear an earlier truck fire incident. There's very heavy traffic delays in that vicinity, so please be patient. In Cape Town, the M3 inbound has a crash before Hospital Bend, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend, and Victoria Road is slow-moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Shumi, you've got some cricket news, right?
I do. Proteas women will be without the services of all-rounder Marizanne Kapp for the upcoming ODIs against Sri Lanka, as she will be rested. Kapp has been rested in preparation for subsequent tours and the Women's Cricket World Cup later this year in India. SA Women today named a squad featuring 3 uncapped players for a training camp ahead of the Tri-Nation Series against Sri Lanka and India later this month. In tennis, some of South Africa's most talented young tennis players will be given an opportunity to represent the country in the Billie Jean King Cup competition when they turn out in the Europe Africa Group 2 tournament in Cyprus, and that's happening between the 7th and the 12th of April. The 5-member SA team announced by national captain Roxanne Clark features 5 teenagers, including 4 individuals who will make their debuts in the international women's team competition. Marie-Louise van Zyl, an 18-year-old, is the only player in the squad who has earned a cap in the BGA King Cup, but she will be well backed by her sister Yanni van Zyl, as well as Donna Leroux, Abigail Foslo and Caitlin Ramduth. Then in football, Maruma Gallants will be seeking to continue their winning run in the Betway Premiership when they lock horns with a struggling SuperSport United side at the Dr. Petrus Malamela Stadium tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Gallants have picked up form, winning the last 2 matches against TS Galaxy and Cape Town City respectively. The Free State outfit are now 12th in the Betway Premiership table as they fight to avoid relegation. On the other hand, SuperSport United are winless in their last 3 league matches and are in the relegation zone in 15th on the log. In the meantime, Kaizer Chiefs influential midfielder Thabo Cele says that the trying period the club is going through is definitely a crisis, as they deserve to be higher on the log standings in the Betway Premiership. Cele, addressing the media at Amakosi's base in the Taung village, says that Chiefs is not a team that should be fighting for a top 8 spot, but at least for a top 3 position.
Yeah, for sure, man. For Kaizer Chiefs to be sitting where we're sitting, it's not nice. It is. You can call it a crisis, you know what I mean? Because I feel like even us, you know, as a team, we feel that we can do way better, and we're working on that. And eventually, I think it's something that is going to come. If we just keep on working on it and just believe on what we are doing, it's going to come. Because as we were talking, I think there's many positives that we can see, but it's just a matter of being consistent and getting the results now.
Elsewhere, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has hailed Kevin De Bruyne as one of the greatest Premier League players ever, and that it's sad to hear about his departure. The 33-year-old announced today that he'll be leaving City at the end of the season after 10 years with the club.
Sad day. A happy day for the fact that the pleasure personally that we live, or I live this time with him. What he gave us, all of us, his humanity, and of course, don't necessarily tell his influence in our success in the last decade. That will be impossible, imagine, like, you know, without him. And it's a day because, of course, it's part of us, he's living. So when Vincent left, or Sergio left, or David Silva left, and these players like have been contribution. And I will say more names. So these example 3. Of course, it's a time that it's a sad day. So, but still we have 10 games and hopefully 11 and 6 games at home that we can enjoy with our fans, and he will get, I'm pretty sure, the love and the recognition that all of us, the fans, of course, that he deserves.
In rugby, it's do or die for 3 South African teams featuring in the Challenge Cup playoffs this weekend. The Emirates Lions will take to the field first against Edinburgh in London tonight, while the other 2 matches will play out in France. Vodacom Bulls taking on Bayern tomorrow, and the Hollywood Bets Sharks facing Lyon on Sunday. In athletics, reigning World Athletics Athlete of the Year, Teboho Letsile, says that he has his eyes set on breaking the iconic 200-meter record that is held by Jamaican sprint legend Usain Bolt, which was set at the 2009 World Championships in Berlin. The record of 19.19 seconds has stood since 2009.
I mean, I'll say the African record. Whenever I want to break it, I just know where to press and touch, and then go for it. I believe the world record is the one that's up there, that needs to be broken. That's where we are building up everything.
A whole 16 years that record hasn't been broken. That's how good Usain Bolt was.
That's amazing.
It'll be interesting.
Well, Usain Bolt is just, I mean, he's you know, when we spoke the other day about guys like Muhammad Ali and Michael Schumacher, for example, and some, well, I would include Zinedine Zidane, by the way, in that group. You know,
of course.
Players who just, well, Pele, yeah, I watched him, but I was a lighty, right? Maybe so. But they just excite you no matter what. Absolutely generational. Listen, by the way, we're done, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask you, did you see the pictures of Sasha Feinberg in Ngomazulu, who was watching... he went to Arsenal Football Club and then went to Chelsea over the last few days.
I saw some, yeah.
So let me tell you what's so interesting about it. He goes to, Emirates Stadium, Arsenal, and he gets pictures taken with Saka? Yeah. Temba will correct me, you know, their winger, the right winger, right?
Saka.
And then takes pictures with all these Arsenal players and is like, oh, loves being there. And then, of course, the next day he goes to Chelsea Football Club, takes pictures with them. And seems to love them even more. And then his father posts a picture on Twitter of the same youngster, Sasha Feinberg in Ngomazulu, as a 5-year-old or somewhere there at Chelsea Football Club watching a game. And this is like, 18, 20 years later.
Back in the
in the same stands watching the team. So clearly he's been a Chelsea fan, not an Arsenal fan. He's been a Chelsea fan, but it's just a wonderful story of then and now. And now, I mean, he's a magic player himself.
Absolutely.
And the father said, well, you know what? Sasha loves his football.
Listen, dreams do come true. I actually saw one of the pictures with the players also holding up a Springbok jersey. So, hey.
Well, there you are.
He's also one of those that people
the Sasha
are looking up
Feinberg
to.
in Ngomazulu effect. There we are. More sport in an hour, right?
SV Werder Bremen are highly spirited to put their best foot forward to triumph. But Eintracht Frankfurt enjoy life in the top 3, and they want to keep it like that. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Experience the glittering encounter of German football. SV Werder Bremen versus Eintracht Frankfurt. This Saturday, 5 April at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Begin with Buco, and you could hit the road with a brand new trailer. We're giving away 94 trailers nationwide, fully loaded with home building and maintenance supplies to fuel your next project, road trip, or business venture. Spend 1,000 Rand or more in store at Buco. Fill in your entry form and drop it in our competition box. It could be you. Shop, enter, and win with Buco. T's and C's online. Buco.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, let's get to those markets with Paswane Mpatlele, who's a senior accounts manager at Markway Fund Managers. Lots to connect to, I'm sure, around the markets, local and global.
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's not happy Friday as usual. As you've seen from today and the week for financial markets, it continues to be the red screens as we record more losses to end the week. And this is at the back of the United States announced tariff plan. And this has seen a lot of countries under pressure, especially the companies that are globally connected, so feeling the pressure. Brave countries like China, our major trading partners, have taken decisions to put reciprocal tariffs on the United States, around 34% coming into next week. If negotiations don't find middle ground, diplomatic country like ours, South Africa, takes a wait-and-see approach. As the quick reaction, they don't see it as they see it as a counterproductive, so rather make discussions with the U.S. On U.S. developments, they have on the economic data, the U.S. job numbers were better than expected. The 228,000 jobs created in the month of March, but the probability of this being a top is very high going into the quarter two, where we expect inflation and growth to be declining. The dollar is reflecting all these weaknesses at lows of 102.50. Yields at 6 months lows at around 3.8%. South African yields are also screaming for help at 11.3%. Looking into the commodities, nothing looks good from a global growth perspective because we're seeing copper is hitting weekly losses of 10%. Oil is down on 7% at $64.80 a barrel. Gold is down 2% at $30 an ounce. Platinum is down 1%, $125 an ounce. Bitcoin hovering around $83,000. Still bearish though. U.S. markets in general are trading lower, recording more losses. Dow is down 3.6%, S&P and Nasdaq down 4%. Europe indices across the board are down 4%. Locally, we are recording another 4.8% loss. As our resource sector records 9.3%, reflecting the global concerns. Industrial down 3.7%, financials down 3.3%. Rand has breached the 19 Rand level at 19.08 against the dollar. Rand against the euro is at 20.99 and Rand against the pound 24.71. And Ashraf, we must disclose saying that all eyes will be looking at the central banks, specifically the U.S. Fed, that's speaking later on, to see if they can provide some support currently because things are not looking good.
Things are not looking good. Got that. Best we stop talking about it just for now. It's the weekend. Paswane Mpatlele, thanks for that, right? Okay, what it does mean is we've got time for your comments because I want to get a sense of, well, you certainly have your fingers on the pulse, don't you? Let's hear it.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk. You're listening to the National Pulse.
I wonder what's your one question that you'd like to ask the Vice Chancellor of Wits University. Remember, he's been extended his next second term as the Vice Chancellor, which started like a few weeks back. So 5 years in office, replacing Prof. Adam Habib, if you recollect, who's at SOAS in the UK. What would you like to ask him? Perhaps if you want to send out a text message or voice note, you can do that right away, by the way. I suggest so that we can even if you don't call in live, then we could certainly do that. And that number is 0614 104 107. But let's get to you now. Mike in Durban, go for it.
Hello, Ashraf.
Yeah.
Ashraf, the farmers in America are very, very, very worried. I was watching CNN today, and they interviewed these farmers with beans, and they were very emotional. They said they voted for Trump, but they know that now they've got a problem because 70% of their crop goes to China, and they don't want bailouts from the American government. They want a free trade. And it's very, very sad. I watched that interview, and I hope our farmers are listening on this side. Everything that is happening there is not necessarily benefiting the people of the country. It might benefit the billionaires, it might benefit the government itself, but not the people. They're going to pay higher prices.
So they said because of the tariff increases, and as a result, there's a possibility, say, Chinese farmers may not, or importers may not import from them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because China's got are putting on a 35% against the U.S. On the tariffs.
Yeah. Okay. Point well made.
Oh, there's one thing I just want to mention. I heard your caller earlier on talking about the president resigning.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. I'm not an ANC supporter. One thing that worries me in South Africa, I'm a person from the 60s. I'm in my late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually witnessed the apartheid in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be a very sad day for me for us to have a leadership of white in a majority black country. And the sad part, Ashraf, the ANC has made so much of mistakes, and we cannot afford the MK party. This is my opinion. We cannot bring back the same people who are tainted from the past. Where are the Tuli Madonsela and all these type of people? Why can't they stand up and run our country?
Well, because they're just not wanting to get into politics. They do play. I know I interact with Tuli often. She's the head of the Social Justice Project in Stellenbosch University, emphasizing the issues of social justice in the country, and she believes that's her role. Many others are in business, and that's their role. Point taken, Mike. I don't know about the white part. I must say, if someone asked me that, would I be obsessed that we must have a black president of our country forever? My gut feeling is someone who wants to expound on this theory of non-racialism. I would say no. I would say I'd be okay with someone of any of the colors. But I think this is the important part. That does not mean that person must harken back to apartheid. So if that person happens to be white, right? I'm looking at a person like Sasha Feinberg in KwaZulu, for example. He comes from is the product of a mixed relationship, right? And do you then say, is he white? Is he black? Is he colored? Really? Does he do a job for the country? He absolutely does. So what I'm saying, if they buy into the ethos of the nation at that time, I'd be fine with anybody. That's just my opinion, okay? Okay, Clarence and Guyana, go for it.
Ashraf, I'm a first-time caller.
Ah, well done.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Glad you called in. There we are.
Thanks very much. I'll call again.
You must.
You know, Ashraf. I heard that the rep for FW de Klerk Foundation, all the points that he made. I just wish as South Africans who can stop pointing fingers. Let me tell you, my view is that there is nothing that South Africa is going to do to please Donald Trump. We are actually his project, and he will make it a point that he continues until he fulfills whatever that he wants to do with our country. My wish is for us South Africans to stop pointing fingers and map up a way that will make us, to continue to have a better life. That's my point.
I tend to agree with you. Even yesterday he went to the game. These people are doing bad things. I'm like, really? Is that all he's going to say all the time? These people are doing bad things. Yeah.
Because Ashraf, if you can look at his tweets, there is nothing good that is talking about South Africa. It's always bad things. And my issue is he doesn't have tangible evidence. There is nothing that FW de Klerk Foundation is going to do. Donald Trump is only prepared to listen to AfriForum. That's all.
Clearly. Okay.
Yes.
Clarence, let's leave it at that. You've made your point. Yeah, do listen regularly and do call in again. We're always good to chat with new voices, new faces from all around the country, from all around the world as well. Maybe time, in fact, I'll get to your calls. Skara, that's like a football name, man. We got to Skara just now.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who side-foots it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Yeah, we've been having this chat off air about Skara being this football name. So Skara in Bizana doesn't want to talk football. He wants to talk about the Afrikaners. Go for it.
Skara.
Yeah.
Ashraf.
Yes, sir.
Just two issues here.
Mm-hmm.
Only two. Really, indeed, I just want our Eastern Cape Police Commissioner to step up, Ashraf. When I'm counting, we have many killings in the Eastern Cape. 2 kids were stolen from Manfrey up to now. Nothing has just been reported. A lady at Kwatashe was killed. CPF members, Kukumbu. A lady at Umtata was killed. And many more at Kumbu again. A lady was killed there. Where is our Eastern Cape Police Commissioner, Ashraf? Nothing.
Okay.
We've just had nothing about from there. Two, another last point. This black and white issue, most of the time, is said, is almost talked about from the radio. It is doing us nothing. How if we remind and remember what Mandela said, let us wrap the old files and move forward. Why are we so on the racial?
Well, I don't know. You know, there's a difference between being on the racial if you are racist, which I think is wrong. But on the other hand,
Really,
to understand
it's
the racial issues and the divides that we have in our country, because it is a divide around who has and who has not, by and large, okay? It's going to be a problem as long as those issues exist. Yeah. All right. I wonder how we should move forward. I mean, if you've got an idea of how we should move forward, Skara, tell me. Maybe on Monday. Let's leave it for Monday, all right? Rian in Pietermaritzburg, hello.
Hello, Ashraf.
Yeah.
Your previous caller and Clarence, the earlier caller, echoed a lot of what I wanted to say.
Okay.
You know, since this issue with Trump, we've just had this vitriol, the what's this, the what's that. You know, that's racist. That's number one. And number two, you know, I'm a South African of German descent. My mentality is very different to that of a white Afrikaner, and is also very different to a white Englishman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you can't club us all together. That's just racist.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. You can't, and that's why you may have heard some of my comments earlier on. You can't generalize about everybody. On the other hand, the vitriol you spoke about, who's put it on the agenda? It has got to be two groups: Donald Trump, and then the role of AfriForum and Solidarity and their lobbyists.
Well,
who
take
actually
them
put
on.
this on, but they've put it on the agenda. They've put it on the agenda.
Take them on. Don't take on the whole of the whites.
Well, I'm not
Take
doing that.
them
I mean,
on.
who's doing that?
No, but and generally your callers to a large extent.
But you see, what I'm saying, you understand. Let me make this point first. Callers respond to how they perceive things. And I can tell you now, white callers, black callers, many of them are spot on. Sometimes they're completely wrong across the board. So
yeah, but
it's a democracy of the airwaves. They do call in, and I don't necessarily agree with them.
We need to inform our people that, listen, we need to move forward. Stop looking at each other on the basis of their skin color. Look at each other as a basis of people, different people.
I wish that can be the case. Thanks for that, Rian.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is why maybe.
Sorry,
yeah.
can I just make a last point?
Very quickly, yeah.
You know, BEE hasn't worked. Affirmative action hasn't worked. In the first 15 years after apartheid, or what I've said, yeah, sure, there were laws against the black people being able to progress. Give them a chance, no problem. But now there have been black kids in school with my children who've all left school, by the way, but they were in the same class from grade RR, but now, so they've had the same privileges.
Okay.
I think the Institute of Race Relations has put it this way. Do a means test. Then base each other, and obviously the poor black man will will qualify for further help. And I don't have any problem with that. But just to blanket everyone together on basis of skin color is racist.
Okay, got that, Rian. Maybe a conversation for next week. Meaning, for example, when you do a tax assessment, the taxman doesn't assess an entire race group or a community. He looks at each person's position individually. Should the same then apply to issues like BEE and affirmative action and how that applies to you with regard to employment equity? So your point is well taken to say if a person then has moved from a position of disadvantage to now advantage, do they still remain disadvantaged? And what an interesting point for a Friday afternoon. Lizo in Klebecha, go for it.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure.
Look, I want to sort of go back a bit far in as far as the employment equity discussion is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
My view is very simple. The policy had great intentions, but the very unfortunate thing about it, it failed because, number one, there were people who ensured that this policy is not going to work. I'll tell you why I'm saying that. A lot of people received this policy in the view of fear. How it was like sort of marketed to them or how it was communicated to them, it made them to fear because in a way it said there must be equality. And in fact, what it even said, I remember there was one clause that said it needs to represent, I'm talking now on the leadership level, it needs to represent the demographics of that particular province. I'll make an example because I come from the Eastern Cape.
All right. Can I push you very quickly? I want to get in one or two more calls before 5. Yeah.
Yes, you can. So like, it would have never worked because those that should have allowed it to work refused it from the word go based on fear. Fear that was never harbored. Later, it was even made worse by greed of some politicians. That's where I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Okay, much appreciate that call. Right, Imbowana in Mahikeng. Go for it.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, right? Your point?
Yeah, you see, the Afrikaner who is admitting that the apartheid was oppressing the blacks and then they benefited out of it, and then they wanted to make things right. That is the courage of people that we need in a country to build a country. Because if they're going to live in denial, that's why we're having all these problems. But if one of them comes in front and accepts what happened, and then they want to change, that is what's going to make our country good.
Okay. Let's see. I think there's a lot of conversation just from today that we can pick up as the means of conversations for next week, because I think there's a lot that would come out of that next week. Right. Thanks for that. Let's see if I can squeeze in one or two maximum WhatsApp comments that we've got. Here's one.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the listeners. This is Anonymous here in Pietermaritzburg. I am keen to know the response of the AfriForum after the announcement of tariffs by Donald Trump. What are they saying? Because they are the ones who rushed to America to spread false information. And this decision of tariffs, as far as I understand, it's going to affect even the farmers that are exporting their products to America. What are they saying about that? Thank you.
Well, it will. Here's the last message I can take now.
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's Yandesa in Tembisa. The guy you are speaking with that were marching to Union Building, that guy is the lot of people there were from Umkhonto Wesizwe, the MK party people. I think even that guy is MK party people that they organize this and calling them that a civil movement something. But he is the MK party that was busy there at Union Building.
Okay, got that. Well, I'll leave it at that. I know what you said. Let's just leave it at that. We'll chat to the Vice-Chancellor of Wits University, Professor Zebulon Vilakazi, coming up just now, because on a Friday we have this fireside chat. So you and me and him will connect for an hour. First up, the news at 5 with Greg Hoos.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, legislation introduced in the US on Afrikaner refugees and Minister speaks on cannabis regulations. Good day to you. US Republican Congressman Troy Nehls has introduced legislation in the House of Representatives to support President Donald Trump's executive order on resettling Afrikaner refugees in the US, dubbed the Afrikaner Act, the Asylum for Farmers and Refugees in Crisis and Necessary Immigration Resettlement Act. It would give priority 2 status to residents of South Africa who are members of the Caucasian Afrikaner ethnic minority group who have suffered persecution on account of their race, ethnicity or ancestry. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
In a statement, Congressman Nehls said the Afrikaner population in South Africa has been experiencing unjust racial discrimination and that the situation continues to get worse by the day, affirming disputed sentiments expressed by President Trump that how Afrikaners are being treated is a massive human rights violation. The bill would have to pass both houses of Congress, including the Senate, which are both controlled by Republican majorities. The text of the proposed legislation reads that the residents of South Africa who are members of the Caucasian minority group and have suffered persecution, in addition to their spouses, children and parents, would be designated priority 2 refugees or a group of special concern, as designated by the State Department. Shervin Brycebees, SABC News, New York.
The Agricultural Business Chambers questioned the methodology behind the 31% tariff imposed by the US on South Africa. This follows Trump's sweeping tariff spree that saw him impose double-digit tariff hikes on a number of US trading partners, including South Africa. The Chamber's Wilfred Browder.
Our problem with the methodology is, and many economists are saying the same thing, this is not based in traditional trade economics or calculations that are used. It appears to be, unfortunately, a fairly arbitrary, one-size-fits-all, and you end up with these weird distortions where Lesotho is now down for a tariff of 50%. So the problem is 30% is an extremely high number. It's trying to pass down any sort of buying chain or pass on to retailers, or retailers pass on to consumers, and it's a very quick shock. And there isn't really any way to offset much of this.
A man has been sentenced to life imprisonment in the Pietermaritzburg High Court in KwaZulu-Natal for the murder of a woman near Camperdown. The woman was killed for taking part in the 2021 local government elections. The NPA's Natasha Karamkosun-Kara says she was shot dead at home the day after the elections.
The Pietermaritzburg High Court has sentenced Sifundo Raphael Ngubane to life imprisonment for the murder of a woman in Camperdown. Both Ngubane and the woman lived in the same area, and during November 2021, there was ongoing tension between the various political groups in the area. In addition to the life sentence, Ngubane was deemed unfit to possess a firearm, and the court ordered that his firearm is forfeited to the state. The NPA welcomes a successful prosecution. Acts of political intolerance and gender-based violence will not be tolerated by the courts. We hope that sentences of this nature have the necessary deterrent effect.
The Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, admitted he didn't consult when he gazetted regulations last month banning the manufacture, sale and import of food products with cannabis or hemp. The presidency later reversed that decision. The minister insists that as a medical doctor, his initial decision was rational, considering the negative effects of cannabis on children. He says he was concerned that the majority of cannabis products in South Africa are imported from Europe, the US and the Netherlands and were not regulated by the SA Health Products Authority.
Remember, there's no medicine that can be sold officially in the country that can go into your body without it being accredited by SAPRA. So we have been knowing that. Now, all of a sudden, out of the blue, you see popcorns, chocolate, lollipops, everything, and especially products that we know are consumed mostly by young people. That was scary for me because we know that some people believe there's nothing wrong with cannabis. I'm working in health, I can tell you.
The bail application of the daughter of a Limpopo police officer who allegedly benefited from 10 million rand in insurance fraud continues for the second day at the Polokwane Magistrates Court in Limpopo. Sergeant Rachel Kutumela's daughter and co-accused, Flora Shukane, started with her bail application yesterday. Shukane, her mother and her aunt allegedly killed 9 people for insurance claim purposes. The top story, US Republican Congressman Troy Nehls has introduced legislation in the House of Representatives to support President Trump's executive order on resettling Afrikaner refugees in the US. That's SAFM News, I'm Greg Goos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Banyana set for heartfelt send-off as two icons buy out against Malawi. Villeroy extends contract with the Bulls, and Oscar Piastri sets the pace in Japan, topping second practice at Suzuka. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Germiston queuing towards Geldenhuys interchange, the M1 southbound queuing towards Omonde, the N3 northbound in Lindbro Park has a crash before Marlborough Drive, and Mabopane Highway northbound in Pretoria has a crash near Brits Road. In KZN on the N3, an earlier truck fire incident at Van Reenens Pass has been cleared, but there's still very heavy traffic delays. The M19 westbound has a crash before Dunkeld Road exit, the N2 northbound a stationary vehicle before the M41 Gateway exit, and the R102 southbound has a crash at Glen Anil exit. In Cape Town, on the N1 inbound, there's heavy traffic towards Kuburg interchange, the M5 southbound queuing towards the N2 highway. Walter Freden Road southbound has heavy traffic between Philippi and Mitchell's Plain, and the N2 outbound has heavy traffic through Somerset West. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit cfi.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
SV Werder Bremen are highly spirited to put their best foot forward to triumph. But Eintracht Frankfurt enjoy life in the top three, and they want to keep it like that. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Experience the glittering encounter of German football. SV Werder Bremen versus Eintracht Frankfurt this Saturday, 5 April at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The soundtrack of your life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Gerika. Rhythm of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. This is SAFM.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.1 FM in Johannesburg.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so it's Friday afternoon, and Friday afternoon means we move into fireside chat mode. Now, we don't literally have a fire around us, but I mean, the chat will still be just that. So looking forward to the conversation, and I hope you join us for the better part of the hour with Professor Zebulon Vilakazi, who's the Vice-Chancellor of Wits University, and I would say, extended Vice-Chancellor, because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Good to see you once again, and thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse as part of this fireside chat.
No, thank you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. What do you prefer? I mean, do people always address you as Prof. Zebulon or just Zebulon, or what do they do, and what do you prefer?
Zebulon.
Just that. Chomis.
Just, yeah.
The last person who said just call me Naledi was Naledi Pandor. By the way, like leave all those fancy titles out of the picture anyway, right? Well, good to see you.
This is a fireside chat, right? So
well, absolutely, yeah.
Dispense with all the formalities.
You guys had graduation week last week.
That's correct.
And most of the varsities have had that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
How significant is that in terms of you? Because you see offhand people and their families, right? And they all have a unique story to tell, and they come through that, and their success is the success of the university as well, isn't it?
Correct. It's a rite of passage, right? With all the ceremony, the clothing that we have, just to acknowledge not just the students or the graduates or who become graduates, but the parents. In fact, because I've got a view of the parents from the stage.
You can see that. Yeah.
They are happier than the graduates sometimes. Because you can tell that the parents, cocos and aunts and whoever is accompanying the students or their guardians is beaming more than the students themselves.
But also because you have some parents who didn't graduate themselves.
That's correct.
Right? They've had absolute struggle in their lives. And then you get others who themselves are professors, and that means academia is the norm in their in their families. But I think the first group of parents that I refer to, I mean, that's the one that's more special, where that the achievement of their child is a game changer in their family, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, those are first generation kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm a first generation as well, so that means a lot for the family, not just the family, the extended family, and in some instances, I think for rural kids, for the entire village. So that person basically is a beacon of light, not just for their immediate family, but for those that come from the entire community. So that actually is something that you take for granted, Ashraf. When you go with the motions of capping students, and you've got thousands that go through your system, but you know that for that individual, it is their universe.
And therefore, I mean, and I'm just wondering about this. I mean, we don't tell the story of what I call the graduate, right? That every graduate has a story. And besides them maybe posting something on social media, there's nothing that captures their own journey.
Correct.
I mean, I know we're talking about 100,000 people, across the country, but probably we should. Is there a way to just capture their unique story?
We do capture vignettes and snippets of individuals that you ask. You can't ask 10,000 individuals who go across. I mean, you're a parent of vets.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were also there beaming. When
absolutely.
We can't capture every.
2 adverts, 2 at UJ, so we've been through it all, yeah.
You can't capture every parent or every child or every student, rather, who graduate. But we just, have a snapshot, representative of the background of the faculty. We capture those that are third generation graduates, first generation, urban, rural, middle, working class, and different faculties as well. So we just kind of have as representative as we possibly can, just to get a sense of the pulse without actually, and I mean for them, even if their grandparent went to vets, they are proud to say, my grandmother came here. So therefore, it is also irrespective of whether the parent is a first or second or third generation, but that child getting kept where you were kept 30, 40 years ago is something special as well, in as much as being kept for the first time in your family. Yeah. So it's just all overall special.
I know there's not much time when you cap all these thousands of people. I just love almost somehow that we could have this Academy Award situation where you say we give you 1 minute to comment. I would just love that. I know why we don't, but I just love, because there will be political diversity in their comments.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Well, what about yourself? I mean, you're a nuclear physicist, right?
I used to be before I became a
now you're the vice chancellor,
administrator.
Yeah,
yes.
but when what is your story? Can you remember? I mean, well, you must remember. The day that you were capped yourself. I mean, where at which varsity?
To cut the long story short, because I mean, you've got other things to talk about. I am from the East Rand, Katlehong. I was born in the late 60s, 1969, actually, just in the year that Armstrong landed on the moon, and I can say something about that much later.
Okay.
Then obviously, those are the times. I mean, you and I are part of that generation, more or less. And Katlehong, and we couldn't go to places like Wits.
Absolutely.
You would have had to go to Devon Westville. I would have had to go
or
to
you needed
Zululand.
ministerial consent and all
Zululand,
that
yeah,
drama.
because of my surname.
Yeah.
And I'm from Katlehong, right? So, but anyway, with a bit of luck here and there, and I did manage to get some scholarships. And then now people ask me, why physics? When we were young, either you became a lawyer, or a priest, or a teacher, or a doctor. Of course, doctors were, So if you were more scientifically inclined, medicine was meant to be for those that actually were among the top kids in class. However, there was a hospital not far from where I stayed called Natal Spirit Hospital. It's now moved to Vosloorus. I went there one Sunday just to have a look, because I was getting to the stage where around, say, just before JC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to look at career decisions.
Start thinking, and then I went to the hospital, casualty ward, because there's one side of hospital I used to go to.
Let me guess, you ran out of there.
I saw blood,
Yeah.
They turned up at Katlehong in the 1980s.
Like, I don't want to be here.
Exactly. Blood all over the place. And I realized one thing, that number one, I'm a hypochondriac, and number two, I'm squeamish and queasy.
Okay.
So I just said, medicine is out. So I went and told my father, was very disappointed, and said, medicine, anything to do with blood, medicine or dentistry, anything like that, count me out. So then obviously options could be engineering or physics. And then to go back, I don't want to take too much of your time talking about myself, to go back to the story of why physics. We grew up in the 70s. I mean, at the back of our mind, we knew that Armstrong had landed on the moon. Even in our classes at school, we had pictures of Armstrong on the moon, right? So it kind of triggered my imagination. And then in 1981, I was playing football with my friends, and then they were launching Columbia. I'm sure you've read about it. I won't bore you with that detail. And I just shot a space shuttle.
Okay.
Yeah, and then of course, other things that added, and I'm delighted that you opened the digital dome, was to come with my primary school in 81.
You were there at the planetarium.
Okay. Yeah. So these little punctuation points in your story are like those points of inflection.
But which shows you that when you're exposed to a certain environment,
right,
how it can influence your decision making next. I mean, you don't have. So Sharona was here early on. I mean, she's got a senior communications position within Wits University. But assuming let's say you brought a child or a grandchild, you never know how they could be sitting as like, I want to be a talk show host. You just don't know that, isn't it?
Exactly. And I mean, we all had. I also wanted to be, when you're like, imagine, put yourself in the mind of a preaching boy. Right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You have all these things. You wanted to be a boxer, football player, firefighter, just to be a hero. Because I think, quite frankly, Ashraf, scientists were not, the people that were cool.
They were not. They were not cool.
Sportsmen, jocks are the guys that you all honor.
But I mean, you're saying that the Armstrong story and subsequent issues around Columbia and all that. I mean, that inspired your journey into. So you wanted to see, what space science. I mean, what is it about it that inspired you?
That's a very good question. I would say that it's largely about being a hero. I always put myself back on. Of course, with time, you're thinking or analysis of the situation changes. But when I was to go back to 1981, I was about 12 years old then. And I said I liked boxers. I liked Jomo Sono, Essen Swelengwe, and all the football players, Pele. They were heroes, right? So there's an element of I like Clint Eastwood.
Okay, yeah.
You all like, like the kind of. I know whether it's the right way to use.
So you were chasing the heroes more than what they were actually doing.
And then what are astronauts? They're these like guys who put themselves out there. They are heroes. They're like fighter pilots.
Yeah. Wow.
You see, there's that element of. Yeah. So it's not as romantic as just wanting science for science's sake. There's a bit of an element of admiring those.
Who's your hero now?
I've got many. Albert Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
Boring. Robert Oppenheimer. Boring. No surprise there. Steve Biko.
Yeah.
I mean, for his legendary thinking about the human condition. My father. Those are my heroes. I've got many heroines, of course.
You can mention them too.
My wife, my mother, my sisters.
In fact, talking about your wife
and Marie Curie, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize.
Wow, there we are. So I mean, it's so varied. But by the way, I mean, talking about yourself and your wife. So your wife is it Maria? Mary. Now, the only reason I know that is because Oliver Dixon made the point to say, Ashraf, you're speaking to Zebulon. Please tell him we are chummies, and when are we going to meet again at the opera? I should just tell you this. I'm passing on the and your answer. In fact, well, we can answer that right after this.
SV Werder Bremen are highly spirited to put their best foot forward to triumph. But Eintracht Frankfurt enjoy life in the top 3, and they want to keep it like that. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Experience the glittering encounter of German football. SV Werder Bremen versus Eintracht Frankfurt. This Saturday, 5 April at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, we're chatting to Professor Zebulon Vilakazi, who's the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Witwatersrand, and he's my fireside chat guest for the next, up to 6 o'clock as well. Anyway, by the way, I can take maybe 3 calls maximum, through calls or WhatsApp. So if you're up for it, you can certainly do so. Do it right now. Let's see what we can do. You know the number. You should know it. If not, I'll give it out, that number, in a few minutes' time, right? So let's get back to the opera that Oliver Dixon made the point. I need to ask you about it. You have an interest in the opera?
Classical music, yes.
Yeah. So that's another interest. You're very varied, that means. Eh?
I guess it comes from, school. My father liked classical music from his church days. So, and I never liked it as a kid. My uncles liked jazz. So they play jazz on Sunday, classical music in the evening, and I've continued to do that. So in your teens, you don't like that kind of music. That's not cool. We listened to Michael Jackson. He was my hero.
The thriller. What a thriller.
Yeah. So then as you get older, I guess, we reach a particular stage where you start liking serious music. So, and I'm now a regular at the Johannesburg Philharmonic Orchestra.
Okay, well, there you are. So I want to just go back to your career then as this nuclear physicist. So how did that career then play out? Because, one thing is the studying from Katlehong and the wish list and the heroes, and then practically you now become this nuclear physicist. So what then did you do?
I never really, I did a bachelor's degree in physics. And obviously, being a first generation person, you want to go back and work. And I thought, okay, maybe I could be a teacher, because once you've done a degree in physics, you either, those days, the options were very few for us, as you remember. I couldn't go to Denel. I couldn't go to CSR even. The opportunities were. So ESCOM was opening up a little bit. I went for a few interviews and, I did some tests and I was going to be taken there. I'm like, but really, do I want to work? Then at Vets, I saw one guy who said, well, why don't you tutor for a few months? And then I tutored and I enjoyed the space and I registered for a master's. Your journey is not straight, it's not linear. There's little turns and twists and turns in your life. Your CV is shortened, but the CV makes it look so clinical. But there are so many segues you take along the way. Then master's followed by a PhD, and then I went to Geneva to finish part of my PhD there at the Collider. Came back to South Africa in 1999 to teach at the University of Cape Town. The rest is history. you know.
So you didn't plan to be, in academia as a teacher, lecturer.
That switch happened in my senior year, kind of when I was becoming a postgraduate student. I'm like, well, actually, I could be a researcher, either in a lab like CSIR or any other lab, or become an academic. So I think by the time I did my PhD, it was clear that I wanted to be a researcher.
Okay.
So then what I never thought I would become was a university administrator, either a dean, deputy vice chancellor or vice chancellor. I wanted to see myself retire as a professor, hopefully make a discovery that is going to have my name imprinted.
Now you're not anonymous, because a vice chancellor of Wits University can never be anonymous, can he?
It's not the same as having an equation named after you.
I'm sure. Well, yeah. So why the jump then to administrator? What happened to you?
Things happened by chance. I was asked at UCT, at a very young age, in my mid-30s, I was asked by Dr. Khozo Mokhele, who was heading the National Research Foundation, to head one of his nuclear physics laboratories. One is called the Temba Labs in Cape Town. I said no, but of course, after a month he persuaded me, and I took a leave of absence from UCT to head the Temba Labs, and with the aim, Ashraf, of going back to physics, whilst I was continuing my research at CERN, at the Collider. And lo and behold, in 2013, I get a call from someone, Habib, in Johannesburg. Adam says, text me and says, I'm looking for a DVC and I've heard about you. Are you interested? I said, no, I'm not interested.
So you didn't know each other, really?
No, just vaguely, because we are from different. I knew of him because he was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I was more visible.
But you were not like friends or chummies, no.
And then and then he. Well, Adam is quite a persuasive fellow, and then I said, okay, I'll give it a go, and then I became his deputy vice chancellor.
So you moved to Wits,
Then I moved up to Johannesburg to Wits,
With the plan that you would be the vice chancellor one day?
No, I promise you, because Adam was DVC, was VC, so again, and this is for real. I know that you don't believe me. I can tell by the way you look at me.
Yeah,
I wanted to go back again to become professor in the Department of Physics here. And then Adam left in 2020.
Yes.
And then the chair of the council, and I think that's on record, said, but you're not applying, why don't you apply? And then I said, okay, I'll put my CV forward. So I mean, actually,
would that be Judy Dlamini now?
No, it was Isaac Shong.
Okay.
Judy is the chancellor.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, a lot of encouragement from Judy and others as well. Judy. But I'm not saying this out of kind of to putting on a false modesty, but you just once you enter the system, you get dragged into it. You don't go like, I want to become a vice chancellor.
So you still want to get into lecturing? I mean, is that still part of the?
I missed the classroom.
So isn't it amazing? The more successful you are, the less choices you have. It seems
absolutely,
like. I thought if you're successful, you have more choices. You don't.
No. As you get older, of course, your options narrow in life, right?
But now you're in your second term, 5-year term, right?
I'm about to start my second term next year,
What's it been like, 5 years?
It's been a roller coaster. I think it's been challenging, I mean, if you read the news, but it has been an amazing 5 years. I wouldn't change any decision I've made for a thing. I've made mistakes, like you all do. I look back at some of the decisions I took, and I could have
What's the one mistake you've made that you feel like, oh, goodness, man, I can't believe it? Like the whole country's waiting for this one.
I think there have been decisions like. It's very hard to think of that decision now.
Okay, think about it, and we'll see.
And
what
I can't
happens.
even think of any good one I've made as well. So.
Oh my God, I was going to ask you that next. What did you get absolutely right? So we're going to pause because we're going to get into news and sport, and we'll pick up the conversation once again with Professor Vilakazi. You tell your friends as well, if you certainly know anybody linked to Wits University and other academia, they need to be tuning in. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Greg Hose.
Quick look at the headlines. Economists say recent developments around the GNU have cast a cloud on the country's economic future. Civil society group Defend SA has expressed dissatisfaction with President Ramaphosa's leadership, saying they want him to step down. And a British anti-abortion campaigner whose case has attracted attention in the US has been found guilty of breaching a protection zone outside a clinic in the UK. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in Harton Estate has a crash reported before Glenove Road. In Pretoria, the N1 northbound is queuing towards Atterbury Road and Daspoort Tunnel queuing at the tunnel. In KZN, the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a crash reported after the Ashburton exit. All lanes are open. The N11 in Newcastle has a truck crash reported near Inkwelo, and the M19 westbound in Westville has a crash reported before Dunkeld Road exit. In Cape Town, the Two Oceans Marathon road closures throughout southern suburbs and South Peninsula areas will be in place on both Saturday for the marathon and Sunday for the half marathon from 3:30 a.m. until around midday. The N2 outbound queuing towards the R300 junction and Marine Drive outbound slow moving between Pardon Island and Sunset Beach. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Chumi, let's talk football. Let's talk Banyana.
Yeah, as Banyana gear up for their WAFCON title defense, they'll bid a farewell to stalwarts Nokomatlo and Nompumelelo Nyandeni, who are retiring from international football. Banyana face Malawi in 2 international friendlies tomorrow and on Tuesday. As much as the fixtures will help coach Desiree Ellis and her technical team iron out a bit of things in the team in terms of the build-up to the WAFCON, eyes will primarily be on the 2 grades, with Matlo boasting more than 170 caps and Nyandeni looking to earn her 150th cap.
I think it's important at home because you're playing in front of your home crowd, to say, for the crowd also to say thank you to the players, because away from home it doesn't mean anything. You don't have your home support. I mean, maybe their families want to come down to be able to see that send-off and be part of the send-off. And if you have it at home, obviously you don't get that experience. It's just like another game. So it's important. We also saw last year when we played the USA, they did similarly with 2 of their players at home. The stadium was packed out, and what a wonderful send-off for them. So we want to do similar things.
Also, Manchester United have been boosted by the return of Kobe Mainoo ahead of the Manchester derby against Manchester City on Sunday. Mainoo has been sidelined for the past 2 months with a muscular issue. Meanwhile, Erling Haaland is still out for Manchester City. Kickoff is at 5:30. In rugby, Willie Leroux says that he hopes to make more of these special memories with the Bulls after signing a 2-year contract extension. The 35-year-old arrived at Loftus Versfeld back in 2023 on a 3-year deal that would conclude in June 2026. But after much speculation in recent months about whether he's going to move overseas, Leroux has decided to virtually see out the rest of his career in Pretoria. Meanwhile, the 2024-25 Sevens champions will be crowned this weekend as the circuit reaches its climax in Singapore, with the Blitzboks looking to secure their top 4 position, currently 4th in the standings after a 9th place finish in Hong Kong last week. The Springbok Sevens hold a slim 2-point advantage over 5th place France. Maintaining this position would give South Africa valuable seeding benefits heading into next month's Sevens World Championship in Los Angeles. Then in netball, with Netball South Africa preparing to elect a new board in October, former Proteas assistant coach Dumisani Chauke is hopeful for change in the sport. Chauke, who served as the assistant coach to Norma Plummer at the 2023 Netball World Cup in Cape Town, is eagerly anticipating the elections.
What I wish for the sport is that we need to constantly be building, constantly introspecting and reviewing what we're doing, and that will assist us in planning better for the future. I mean, the term for the current administration is coming to an end in October, and I think maybe it's time for us as a netball fraternity to, like I said, introspect, look at what worked, what didn't work, how do we improve what didn't work, and how do we sustain or maintain what worked well for us. So change is good, but not too much change as well, because we need some sort of continuity. But yeah, I think it's about time that we as a netball fraternity also, cultivate values that include accountability, values that include responsibility, and values that include inclusivity.
Right, moving on to motorsport. Oscar Piastri went fastest today in a McLaren 1-2 during the chaotic second practice for the Japanese Grand Prix that was red flagged 4 times as Red Bull's debutant Yuki Tsunoda came 18th. Now, Piastri clocked a fastest lap of 1 minute 28.114 seconds to pip teammate and championship leader Lando Norris by 0.049 seconds in dry, sunny conditions at Suzuka. Piastri and Norris have won 1 Grand Prix each in a dominant start to the season from McLaren. Finally, in athletics, reigning World Athletics Athlete of the Year, Tebogo Letsile, has his eyes set on breaking the iconic 200-meter record that was held by Jamaican sprint legend Usain Bolt, which was set at the 2009 World Championships in Berlin.
I mean, I'll say the African record. Whenever I want to break it, I just know where to press and touch, and then go for it. I believe the whole record is the one that's up there that needs to be broken. That's where we are building up everything.
Alrighty. With that said, it is a wrap from my side. Ashraf, what are you up to this weekend?
I'm supposed to ask you that question. Why are you jumping the gun?
I wanted to surprise you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, it's very chill. As you know, last week was the last weekend before of Ramadan. So we were fasting. It was hectic. And then Monday was the day of Eid, right? So we family gather. So I think this week's very chill, but perhaps to do certain things that we didn't do in Ramadan. But one of them, which I haven't yet planned, and I need to really do this immediately after the show, is try and play a game of paddle, because I have not done that in a month.
I was actually going to ask you, but with this weather.
Well, I know. Outside of playing paddle, which I hopefully play Saturday or Sunday morning if I can, I will see the Man United Man City game. That's on Sunday.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sorry, I have an online conversation with someone on Friday, on Sunday afternoon, that links to an event that I'm emceeing in a few weeks' time in Johannesburg, and that's really significant. So looking forward to that chat and that event that comes up, I think the 21st of April. In Johannesburg. So we'll see about it. What about you?
Well, I am not working this weekend, so spending time with the family, watching some sport, looking forward to the F1 Sunday, 5:30 in the morning, and the Manchester Derby on Sunday.
5:30 Sunday morning. Okay, I need to watch it. You've just reminded me. Thanks for that, Tuli. You better say goodbyes.
All right, with that said,
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the International Friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
A last day of the week, Jimmy Muyaha. What do you have in your money bag, I should say?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. I have absolutely nothing in the money bag, unfortunately. And that is because it is a sea of red wherever we look from a market's perspective. There is nothing to be positive about going into the weekend. This is day 2 of potentially what could be the start of one of the biggest declines that we've seen, at least in the last 5 years. The markets are having a torrid time. There was about $2 trillion, almost $3 trillion of value wiped out of the markets yesterday. Today was very much in the same breath. The Nasdaq down almost 5%, the FTSE down almost 5%, the DAX down almost 5%, the CAC 40 down almost 4%, the Nikkei in Tokyo down about 3% as well. The SA Top 40 down more than 5% today. Resources down almost a full 10%. Industrials down 4%. Financials down 4%. To give you a bit of context, Ashraf, this time last week when you and I spoke to end of last week, the Rand was probably around the 18 Rand 20 mark against the US dollar. It is currently at 19 Rand 10 cents. It was around 23 Rand 50 or so against the British pound. It is currently at 24 Rand 70, and it was at around 19 Rand 50 against the euro. It is currently at 21 Rand against the euro. So by far, probably the worst week we have had since the pandemic. Markets absolutely not letting up. The sell-off that's been taking place is just an unprecedented sell-off, and this is off the back of obviously the tariffs that were announced this week, but also we saw as recently as this morning, Asian time, the Chinese government responding with reciprocal tariffs of exactly the same percentage that the United States had levied on them. So the United States had levied 34%, China responding with its own 34% tariff announcement. And alongside that, we saw, I think it was about, I'd say about 30 minutes or so ago, possibly even less than that, Donald Trump's putting out a conversation, or tweet rather, or a truth post on his Truth Social account saying that now would be a good time for the Fed to cut rates. So President Trump, by all accounts, causing absolute chaos in the markets and not really batting an eye. If we look at it, the Brent crude price is positive at $65 a fine ounce, but I don't think that the OPEC bloc is going to allow that price to decline further and to decline the way it did back in the pandemic. So I expect we might hear from the OPEC bloc soon around what measures they're going to put in place from a supply perspective there. But if we look at every other metric, every other market, platinum and palladium down towards $900 an ounce. This time last week we were having conversations about being close to $1,000 an ounce. Gold price was at around $3,150 at some point. It is now $3,023 a fine ounce. Bitcoin is holding steady though at 1.5 million rands in rand terms, but $82,600 odd a Bitcoin. But I wish I had positive news going into the weekend. All I can say is, to those out there, it's time to hold on and hold on very, very tight, because we don't know where this is going to go going into next week. We have to keep a very close eye on that. I will, of course, be following up on the tariff conversations that I began yesterday, and we'll be having that conversation next week as well with ITAC and potentially the DTIC if we can get them on the show. But we're going to the weekend with very, very sore hearts, very red screens, and very, very painful hearts. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, and I have a sense the longer you talk, the more the rand will drop and the shares in the JSE will drop. So best you stop talking. Enjoy your weekend, Jimmy. We will connect on Monday. Thank you. There we are. Jimmy Moyaha. No show, of course, today, right? In fact, Oliver Dixon has the show with the week review coming up from 6 to 7, right? Okay, let's get back to my guest with a fireside chat. We chat to the Vice-Chancellor of Wits University.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
I'm looking at this lovely tweet, by the way, Zebulon, from Ste in KZN, Stembiso, saying, the interview is so great as always. Now that Prof. Velakazi admired Jomo Sono, he sounds like a buccaneer. Very smart guy indeed. Okay, so he's got that right. Did you work out what your biggest mistakes is and what you got right? I thought I'll give you time, yeah.
Yeah. During a moment of confrontation with students, when there's a situation either in 2015, 16 or in subsequent years, you have a lot of moving parts in the system, and I think you have to take decisions. Taking a decision, of course, is not anything one can regret, because our jobs is primarily to do that. Mm-hmm. But when you look back with hindsight, either making or not to make a concession, what kind of a decision did you take to respond to situation A, B, C, and D? You look back 2 or 3 years later, you could have done a better job. And I think that, to me, the situation that kind of is right up on my radar screen on things that I could have done better was sometimes how you respond to situations. Right? Not that you took wrong decisions, is the timing.
You took too long.
Either you responded too hastily or you responded too, But of course, you try as best as you can to corral data on all the information and moving parts that you have, and they move quite fast and they escalate quite fast. Yeah. At some stage, when do you respond? When do you take the ultimate decision to do A, B, C,
Absolutely.
and D?
Interesting.
So that's where I think, and I think I look back on it, actually I could have dne this better, but had I not done this, what could have happened?
Who knows, yeah.
So it's actually not, it's quite paradoxical. It's not like an exact solution to one situation, but it's a question of, how and when. So I think in the bigger scheme of things, when you have situations like that, you land yourself making quick decisions on the fly, as it were.
Well, I've had to make some decisions today, like 2-3 different things, and you never know if you get it right. But Bruce Whitfield, a financial journalist, he's got a podcast, and I don't know what the name is, but it's something about the how to make quick decisions, right? Do you train for that? Can you train for that, to make quick, good decisions?
Actually, that's a very good. I wasn't trained for it, because what I was trained to do in science was to collect data. You analyze data, and then once you've got all the data analysis done thoroughly, we've beaten that problem to the pulp by looking at various approaches, and you say, here's the right approach, right? I've come to the end of solving this complicated mathematical problem. And but fast-moving things and with human beings like stock market investing doesn't work according to that kind of logic.
Absolutely.
So for a person who's not trained, who comes from thinking, rationalizing things through logically, it becomes very difficult to take those quick decisions.
Absolutely.
So I'm a slow thinker in that regard.
Well, there you are. What have you got right? I mean, what's give yourself a pat on the back. What have you got right in the 5 years?
Bringing relative stability to the university. The university is well run, I can say so, and it's not because of me. And also the developments of the last 5 years. I mean, we've raised more than 3 billion rand for various projects. We've capitalized Frankenwald for potential student bursaries endowment in the future. Opening up the West Planetarium,
which I was there at the opening, as you know,
and the Chris Seabrook,
yeah,
and the Simon of course. I mean, that was one of my highlights with our mutual friend,
with our Prof. Barry Dwolotsky. I mean, he actually showed me Chimologong like about a year before it even started, and he said, come and spend a Saturday morning with me.
Yeah.
And it was like nothing. And it's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. So, I mean, sadly, he's passed on. But
you see, one of the highlights of my career was to work closely with Barry.
Okay.
I mean, he was like my technological mentor.
Yeah.
Good man.
Well, there you are. I mean, so he's gone. Also, in terms of you had to step into the shoes of Adam Habib now. Well-known, very high profile because he was a political commentator, so he was known across the country. We've all interviewed him. And then in the last bitter year or two of his tenure, he became very unpopular, right or wrong, because of he was in the middle of a fees must fall issue, as you know, and many people say that's like a complete lose-lose situation. What do you do next? He says something, Zuma says something else. The learners, the academics, they're all protesting. How difficult was it for you then because you had to step in and say, well, I'm the leader. You gave the example of Jomo Sono. In football, coaches, they leave within a week and they get fired. And then, you have to become the new coach and say, hey, I'm better than the previous coach. What was it like for you then?
I wouldn't say I'm better than Adam. We've got different manners of approach because of our different intellectual and backgrounds. In terms of, he comes from politics. He's much more comfortable in the space of public commentary than I would be. I'm a lab person. But I think I learned a lot from him. Our transition when I became the vice chancellor, it was extremely helpful. And because we came from different fields of study, we in a way complemented each other. Of course, we did. Adam is quite confrontational. So we had that healthy confrontation and conflict management, which actually made me grow and made him grow as well, as two different styles of leaders. And I think when you've got a leadership team that has got different components, we thought differently, but you arrived at a similar solution. So in terms of Adam, you're not here for a popularity contest, right? And I think that you take decisions, and I think that you took the right decisions at the right time. Whether they are right or wrong, but they were decisions nonetheless, and I think that's what I respect about him.
Yeah, okay. What then are the biggest challenges facing your university going forward?
Student debt,
is
one of them, and obviously the unsustainability of the fee system that we've got. NSS, and you've got students who can pay for themselves or are sponsored by their companies. But you've got the missing middle challenge. That is a national problem, and that actually ends up creating the debt issue.
People who are not poor to benefit from NSFAS, but certainly not wealthy enough to say,
that's right.
You've got all the money in the world, take the money for the year in one check.
That's right.
And that's the majority, right?
That's the majority, yeah. And that's where the children of aspiring middle classes, the children of policemen, of nurses, of clergymen for that matter. So they kind of fall in between those cracks. And I think
what about those who say, we should have no fees at all at varsities? It's a right. It's not a privilege. Once you succeed academically, they must create that space for you.
If you succeed academically, we do have a needs blind system where if someone has gotten, a particular set of marks, they actually get given scholarships by the university to succeed. So therefore, we do have those, but you cannot cater for everyone, because those fees go into paying for the maintenance of the plant, to attract academics, to pay academics. Because what is university without academics? It's not university. You need teachers, right? What is the student without you and the production team?
Yeah.
So you need.
We create the sounds. I mean,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that means your job, besides creating stability and ensuring that the systems work, you're a big fundraiser, isn't it? Fundraising is a big deal, and you don't sign up to become a fundraiser, do you?
Nope. Again, it's a skill that you learn on the job to raise funds.
So how much do you have to like raise annually, and you hope that alumni and other big organizations come and support you?
It's not done by me. I mean, some of these assignments are delegated to the fundraising office, communication office, the outreach office. So you are just basically, in some ways, you are there to sign at the end of the day and be the person that will just take the ball across the line.
Okay, we must have another chat about that. Not today, some other time. Continue to chat with the Vice Chancellor of Wits University, Zebulon Vilakazi. In fact, I want to get to some of the other thoughts in terms of, has he written books besides the nuclear physicist books, and what books does he read? We'll get to that in a moment.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, 10 more minutes chatting to Prof. Vilakazi. He's going to say, please call me Zebulon. It's a fireside chat. Anyway, right, let's. So I asked you about books. Have you written books, not academic books?
No.
Well, yes, no?
I've written mostly academic books, yeah.
Okay, and
in my area of specialty.
All right, and would you consider like a bio on yourself? Is that been like part of the design, or no?
Maybe in future, not now.
Okay, still a lighty, still a young guy. What about reading? What sort of books do you read?
I'm a voracious reader. I mean, I like reading.
Like what?
History, military strategy, war stories.
The Art of War.
At the moment, I'm reading I'm reading 2 books actually. It's quite a tough one actually. Dostoevsky's. I'm rereading again, Crime and Punishment.
Okay.
Very deeply philosophical and quite challenging. And by another Russian, Vasily Grossman, Of Life and Fate, is about World War II, Stalingrad.
Oh my goodness!
So I'm reading,
and it's heavy.
Some grim reading.
How many pages do you read a day, and at what time do you read?
Before sleeping, I page until I start dozing off, until my glasses fall off my.
So
face.
it's the last thing you do, no matter what.
I try to, obviously I do have to do a lot of my council board meetings, PEC meetings, of course.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Administrative reading, I mean I do.
Do you listen to podcasts at all?
Yes. The last podcast I listened to was, again, might sound boring, on World War II.
Goodness, this Vice Chancellor, he is into war, and we want peace. So now we know, right?
How to avoid wars.
Well, maybe that's okay. That's okay, yeah. In fact, we've got a couple of voice notes we want to just pick up. If we can do that very quickly, here's one.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I have a question for your guest. Considering the fact that he is a Vilakazi, he was born at Katlehong, and he also happens to have a very deep voice. Is he not related, or at least is he not the brother of, or even a father, because he was born in 1969, of the South African musician called Kwesta?
Okay, there's some nodding that's taking place, and if you're watching on streaming live, you'll watch it. Your answer?
Kwesta's father, Thomas Bratom, was my teacher at high school.
And that's the link.
That's the link, yeah.
But no, in relation?
I'll have to ask my father.
Okay, so not an obvious one. Here's another one, right?
Hi, Ashraf. I would like to ask Prof. Vilakazi to talk a bit about his experience at CERN, and to please explain as simply as possible what the Hadron Collider project aims to achieve and how far they are with it right now. Thanks.
Okay, got that. Thank you for that. The plan was not to talk into his actual space, but go ahead. You got a minute to answer that.
In a minute. My experience at CERN was really... I can't. It's indescribable because at the time when I went there, I was the only African student, the only student from Africa. So most students came from Europe, came from America, China, and everywhere, and Japan, obviously. And I felt that I carried a load on my shoulders, so I couldn't have any room to fail. And then the Large Hadron Collider is the largest scientific project since the landing of man on the moon. So I felt I was living my dream of a moonshot by participating.
Wow. Why is that so? Why is it
No,
so
basically, it's a $9 billion project involving all. I mean, it's a fundamental physics challenge, but the instrumentation that it takes to put it together required basically European Union, United States, China, Russia. And also the most beautiful thing about it is that I saw all nations working together. Russians, Ukrainians, Germans, everywhere just working together to solve a problem. And I think to me, it's what we call the future of civilization.
Well, there
how
you
we
are.
work together.
The United Nations, actually, in a very different way, right? What about, I like to use this opportunity of getting you to give a shout out to like a young person who's achieving so much. Who you'd like to just say, hey, remember this name. Is there someone?
Shout out to Isaac Nape and Roger Dean, two young, bright physicists that are just amazing young people.
Okay, I was going to say, what do they do? They're physicists.
They're physicists.
Got that, right? And now the whole country knows that, right? What about, who would you like to take out to coffee? You haven't had the chance, but it's like, and it goes on 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like,
Ashraf.
Would you like to? Yes, ask me and I'll say yes. By the way, this has been ongoing. This has been ongoing for about a few years now, I think. Well, I accept. Let's do it soon.
Do you know why? Because when I lived in Cape Town, after Tim Muriso, you took over as
Yeah. And you used to listen.
And I used to listen from home, dropping the kids at school and driving to my place of work.
Well.
So basically, you gave me company for an hour or so.
Well, hopefully I gave you comfort, and I'm trying to do the same thing even now. So as far as the coffee is concerned, absolutely, right? What about your legacy? I mean, when you think of your professional legacy, what would you like to leave?
In this ever-increasing wall of knowledge, I would have loved to have left a legacy of having just put one stone, one brick in this wall of knowledge and contributed to producing the next generation that will make this country and the world a better place. Through science in my area of work.
Of course, yeah. Now, I often talk about building a champion nation, and we talk about how do you champion your country. Now, particularly in the light of what's happened with the USA and South Africa, we often ask people like, okay, how do you champion South Africa? What do you do for your country?
Changing the narrative. South Africans must stop being victims. We've got amazing potential. I mean, we are like world champions of rugby for 4 times?
Yeah.
Twice in a row. Whatever we do better than anyone else. We must just have that sense of self-confidence to actually make this country, the best place on earth.
What's the biggest challenge in our country right now?
Education. Make maths compulsory at matric. Then half the country's problems, at least, will be tackled.
So no matter what.
Knowledge of the mind.
Yeah.
South Africa's got everything. It just needs to take education seriously.
What do you think of the GNU? He's going to say, let me call Adam Habibi.
Exactly. It was a good opportunity to set a different course, but that's for another conversation.
Okay. And I mean, I would suppose the same thing with the budget debate that's taking place right now, because it impacts all of us.
It does, actually, yes. I can say that, I hope that people realize that what's at stake for the country. Let me leave it at that.
Yeah. And any thoughts on Trump in South Africa?
Things are changing so fast, it's hard to have any thoughts.
He's being ever diplomatic to say, you know what, that's out of my real space. Let's talk about something else like Jomo Sono as well. When, on reflection, what has been your life purpose?
I'm not a prophet, I'm not a priest, so I don't have any life purpose as such. I'm just an educator and a scientist. Advancement of knowledge and actually truth, search for truth. This is my personal life purpose.
Okay, but when you were growing up in as you said, in Katlehong, and then you decided that's the journey I want to go. Is there one, I mean, besides say your family, was there one person who planted a seed, like a magic seed that you say, wow, this person changed my life?
My primary school teacher, Mrs. Ngomo.
Mrs. Nkomo.
Yeah. She never spared her rod, that generation, but, made a huge impact in my life.
Well, I'm glad.
Others, through her, I'm just reflecting teachers who made an impact.
I'm glad you did, right? So, and the last thing, then, how would you like to be remembered?
That's a tough one.
Never thought about it.
Never thought about it, no. Maybe I'm still warming up. I think maybe in 5 years' time, I will have left a legacy. I'm still building that legacy.
Not quite ready for that. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, it's been great chatting to you. We'll have the coffee soon, right? And whether it's on campus or off campus, at campus, we can negotiate that anyway. But good to have you with us here, the Vice-Chancellor of Wits University, Prof. Vilakazi. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated, right? And before we leave, let me just remind you of this, right? SASSA Gold Card beneficiaries can still come and collect their new Post Bank Black Card. Now, avoid the risk of not receiving your grant. Join over 1.3 million beneficiaries that are already conveniently receiving their grant using the Postbank Black Card. There are multiple selected outlets nationwide where you can swap your SASSA Gold Card for the new Postbank Black Card. Dial *120 *355# to find one near you. Standard rates apply. Postbank, your bank. Well, that's the show. We'll do it again, as you know, every day. So it starts on Monday with the National Pulse. But Oliver Dixon